Is she gonna have to kill her mom? We're back for more cicadas. I'm sure you guys missed them. I don't know why my heart rate is up so high, to be honest. Unless I think that's high. I don't know anything about heart rates. Heart rate exposed. I really don't think my heart rate should be that high. Is your heart rate high, or are you just happy to see me? A mix of the two, I guess. I'm happy to see you, that much is for sure. So what we up to today? We are playing Higurashi When They Cry Rei. It's apparently like extra stuff. It came out like earlier this month on Steam, but it's barely been out for a hot minute. Scenario select. The worst option. There'll be horror if I recall correctly from the synopsis. I mean, definitely with this one saying the worst option. This is a tale of Rika reaching the summer of 1983. Her power allows her to choose one of many worlds, but is it the blah 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 blah? Is this fuck? Is this world truly the best one for her? The difficulty here is malicious, for all you dear connoisseurs who prefer it that way. You know what? It's saying continue if you can vow that you're truly a degenerate. Makes a lot more sense now, given what the fuck happened here. Anyways, the worst option. I really don't like that laugh still. Oh, words here. Bread rained down from the heavens. Some lamented that it was not meat. Meat rained down from the heavens. Some lamented that they preferred bread. God descended down from the heavens. Until I know what will make all happy, water shall rain down. This is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to actual persons or organizations is coincidentality. I hate that that was necessary to say. The cicada's chorus has been growing increasingly lively. The strange weather during that never-ending June had been hot enough to make us feel like summer had come early. But even so, it was still only June. Hey, it's June now. For us too. Once we got closer to summer in July, the season graced us with even more summerly weather. Today, to fulfill my dream, we all went to play at the swimming pool. The dream might have seemed humble at first, but I didn't have to look back at the 100 years journey it took to achieve it anymore. Still, I decided I shouldn't forget about it. For many people, this is This is a perfectly ordinary day, but for me, it had just taken so many years of wandering, just to get here that it made me feel faint. And remembering it made this seemingly average, regular life fill me with such profound happiness. Wow. Not bringing a camera today must be Mion Sonozaki's greatest failure. Oh, I don't need a camera. I burned this into my memory already. When I close my eyelids, I can still see how cute Keiichi looks. How? Gah! Don't look at them, don't! I'll file your eyelids off your face, Jesus Christ! Isn't yondering what Rena and Keiichi did in the first episode? I mean, I guess that's not completely wrong, I guess. That's what you get for forgetting to bring your swimsuit to the pool. And the whole ruckus about you putting on those shady swim trunks too, from beginning to end, you reap what you sow. Keiichi, you should thank me. If she hadn't brought those swan underpants, your swan would have been swinging all over. Nipaaah. Boy, that was a joy to behold. I didn't plan anything specific for today, and just when I was thinking we'd play some nice quiet pool games. Well, with this group, it would be stranger if something didn't happen. No, that's definitely wrong. If you hadn't planned anything, you wouldn't have bothered to bring those embarrassing swan underpants here in the first place. You were scheming, looking for an excuse to get me to wear them. I'm sure of it. But today was really fun, so I'm totally satisfied I am. It certainly was fun. On that point, I quite agree. Satoko smiled at me, looking for my agreement. So I sent her back just a brilliant smile, expressing just how fun all the romping about today had been. As we all reminisced on our romp at the pool today, we got on our bikes and started on our way home. Hinamizawa didn't have any pools, so we got into a public pool in Okonomiya. There was an elevation difference between the two communities, and while going downhill had been very pleasant, we had a long trip upward on our way back. For Hinamizawa, children at the zenith of their energy, it wasn't much of a chore, but we naturally fell silent as we quietly pedaled up the hill. Seeing everyone so silent made me want to screw things up somehow. Messing with Satoko at times like these was so much fun for me that you could call it the very purpose of my existence. That's a little much, ain't it? I pedaled harder, caught up to Satoko's bicycle as she pedaled in silence, and gave her a nudge in the shoulder. Wah! Rika! Me. After pretending to be mean to Satoko, I sped up. Pretending? You were blatantly mean. Of course she sped up too and chased after me. Satoko struggled to somehow nudge me back, but I was no slouch either. Our speeds naturally increased, and we began to quickly pass the others in the group. What's this? A race? This old man won't lose either. You shouldn't fool around on the road. It's dangerous. Rika-chan, Satoko-chan. This is a public road, and cars sometimes came or went. Blah blah blah. But we lived here for a long time, so we knew not many cars came around at this hour. Rika, a car's coming. Meep, I won't fall for that trick. So when Satoko said that, I thought she was just trying to distract me. A car horn. Is she gonna get isekai'd? When I heard it, I realized Satoko's warning wasn't a trick. But it wasn't so sudden that I wasn't But it was so sudden that I was overtaken with surprise. When I looked in front of me, the car was right there. I panicked and violently swung my handlebars. The motion was more than aggressive and sudden enough to throw me off balance. As my body lurched forward, I realized I was flying through the air. My nose caught the whiff of asphalt, telling me I was a moment away from being hurt. Rika! I heard Satoko shriek. No, the sensation I was experiencing was so unreal that I could only say I thought I heard her. I couldn't even figure out if the sight of the car coming towards me as I hurled through the air was real. Oh god, indeed. But that absence of reality probably only lasted about 1 second. I wasn't even given the time to say oops. She's dead. End of story. Not. I heard the cries of Higurashi in the distance. In those cries dwelt such cool tenderness that I wanted to listen forever. Eventually the silence was broken. The sound of many footsteps approached, pulling my mind back to reality. Suddenly, the cries of the Higurashi were gone. The cries filling the room were that of cicadas. I thought I'd been hearing the Higurashi this whole time. Was that a dream? I was in a bed. I didn't recognize the ceiling. Where was I? The room was small, with an office desk and shelves full of medicine. I recognized the smell of that medicine, and the voices of children mixing with the cicadas' cries. I knew right away. I was at school. I was in bed at the nurse's office. The door opened and Chie appeared. Behind her was Satoko and... Huh? My mind went blank. It was the face of someone who couldn't have been there. Are you alright, Furude-san? Oh, thank goodness. I was really worried. The doctor should be here soon. Please, stay in bed until then. Thank goodness. I really was worried. My mind was still blank, dazed. I kept staring at his face as he spoke words of concern. This person cannot possibly be at school in 1983. Satoshi, are you okay? You still don't look very good. Stay in bed until the doctor gets here. That aside, Satoko Hojo-san, where are you hiding? Jie raised her voice and turned back towards the hallway before Satoko poked her face out, looking as though she was sulking. I didn't throw it that hard. Furude-san is just exaggerating. This isn't how you apologize. Say sorry to Furude-san. I sensed something a little strange about Satoko's tone and mood. In any case, judging by the situation, Satoko had done something to me, and as a result, I've been carried to the nurse's office. That's how it looked to me. But didn't I pass out after falling off my bike on the way home from Okonomiya with everyone? I think a little more might have happened. Come here, Satoko-san. Chie called Satoko in a firm voice. Chie called Satoko Satoko-san before Satoshi went missing. The only time there were two people named Hojo was when Satoko and Satoshi were both here together. In other words, before June 1982. Then, was this the past? Was I repeating everything again? I felt a chill start to crawl through me. I'd gone through all that hardship to get past June of 1983, and now the world had rewound to the past again. The dead end of June 1983 that I challenged for over 100 years, it finally broke through. Would I have to defeat it again? I certainly learned many things and defeated my fate with certain willpower, but I was also saved by a lot of luck. There was no proof that I could challenge June in 1983 again and defeat it like I did last time. Which meant I was probably hit by that car in the bike accident and killed. And just before dying, I had rejected death and rewound the world. The way that unrealistic memory cut off was definitely similar to when I'd rewound the world previously. Then, would I have to undertake a terribly long journey again? That can't be. The idea was infinitely terrifying. As it dawned upon me, I felt as though my vision was growing distant. I still hadn't fully understood just how terrifying this was just yet. Come, Satoko. You need to apologize. Furude-san, I'm sorry for throwing the ball at you, but you were just standing there and being in the way. Satoko's apology was strange. It wasn't even an apology, really. It sounded like an excuse. She looked at Chie and Satoshi, wondering if that was enough. It didn't seem like Satoko had any intention of apologizing for throwing the ball at me. Because Satoko wasn't even looking at me. Not really. It was like I didn't belong in her world. She never treated me this coldly before. And before anything else, she was talking strangely. It didn't seem like the situation that had befallen me was a rewind so far in the past that Satoshi was still around. Something else had happened. Something bizarre that I didn't understand. That's how I felt as I listened to the odd way Satoko was talking. She sounded far more normal than the Satoko I knew. Satoko made a face, like reading out a standard written apology was enough, then ran off in the hallway. I checked the clock. It was in the middle of the afternoon break. She was probably rushing back to the schoolyard because she didn't want to miss any more playtime. As she turned her back on me and ran away, I suddenly felt very cold and sad. If the Sadako I knew had hurt me enough to put me in the nurse's office, she would have stayed with me the entire time. Her footsteps vanished before she'd even look at me once. It didn't seem like she hated me. It felt like she wasn't even interested. What was happening? What year and what month was it right now anyway? Hanyuu was nowhere to be found. Despite wanting to know, no calendar or anything like the one was nearby, so it didn't seem like I could find out right now. Most normal people would give you a strange look if you asked what the year and month were, and I learned from my long journey that I had to be careful about that. Instead, I decided to push that question aside for the moment. Sorry, Rika-chan. I'll make sure to talk to Satoko later. I'm sure she wanted to play. She asked you to play with her because you seemed lonely. Meep. Thanks. I'm not worried about it anymore, so it's okay. As Satoko's older brother, Satoshi apologized in her stead. He seemed no different from the Satoshi I knew. Alright, I'm going to get going then. Thank you, Satoshi. Anytime. Satoshi gave a little wave of his hand, turned, and left the nurse's office. A new set of footsteps approached in his place. From their pace and sound, it wasn't a child. It was probably Coach. Shieho called for him. Ah, Doctor. I'm sorry to call you out so suddenly. She just woke up a few minutes ago. Is that right? That's good, that's good. It was a throaty voice. It wasn't Irie? The man who suddenly appeared, was one I'd never seen in the clinic, or even at the Irie Institute. He was a large man with round curves, the exact opposite of Irie. The stubble on his face made him seem rugged. He was so distinct that I wouldn't forget him even if I'd only met him once. And yet, I had no recollection of him. But he was wearing a white robe. And Shea had called him the doctor from the clinic. So he must have been a doctor from the Irie clinic. But I never met him before. Hey, Rika-chan. You sure went through a lot. Did the ball hit you in the back of the head? Would you mind if I take a look? Me. Without waiting for an answer, the mountaineerish doctor felt around the back of my head. His fingers were uncultured, completely different from Irie's delicate hands. Could you show me your eyes? Yep, you seem alright. Do you have a headache or anything? Any nausea or dizziness? No. I think you're probably fine then. Just to be sure, we'll take you to the clinic and look at your brain waves. Still, as far as I can see, there's no problem at all. Gah ha 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 ha. The doctor laughed, uproariously, spraying spittle everywhere. Jia gave a look of relief too, as if that was a sign there were no problems. I see. Then just to be safe, I'll leave her in your care. Furude-san, please go with the doctor to the clinic. Indeed! We'll be in and out before afternoon hours begin. Let's go. The big doctor, acting too familiar for my taste, pushed me out the door, and before I could fight my feeling of wrongness, I was taken out of the nurse's office. What was this world? Sometimes the days came up with strange numbers and caused little differences, but this is the first world that felt this wrong to me. Did the dice rolls turn up something rare? After repeating this roll for over 100 years, I thought I figured out pretty much every event, and yet this all felt so strange to me. There was something immeasurable about how strange it was, and I couldn't help but feel intensely anxious. I put my shoes on at the entrance before being taken to the car in front of the school gate. All the while, I stared at the big man's back as he walked, racking my brains trying to remember him, but I couldn't come up with anything. No matter how much I thought back, I couldn't recall any man like this in the Mountain Dogs, much less the Irie Institute. If Satoshi was here, that meant it had to be before June 1982. Hanyuu would always be there as soon as I woke up, as you tell me what was going on in that world. But in this world, I haven't seen Hanyuu even once. The radiant sunlight, the annoying cicada cries, the lively voices of my classmates, I knew them all so well. But something was different. It almost made me sick. Hanyuu, where am I? What kind of world is this? Hanyuu didn't answer me. Fine then. If I went home and opened a bottle of wine, she'd be sure to come rushing in. Not once has she ever allowed me in a few elegant minutes to myself. Mii-chan, take this! Ha! Too slow. The most important rule of dodgeball is to go for the weaklings. Aiming for me was a tactical mistake. And the next slowest one is you. Flah! Ow. I saw several classmates playing a game of dodgeball. Mio and Rena were there in the crowd. Rena? Any world where Rena was present was later than April 1982. And Satoshi disappeared from the village in June 1982. The only time Rona and Satoshi could be here at the same time was the short span from April to June of 1982. It didn't seem like I'd gone as far into the past as I feared. But I still had to repeat the June of 1983. That hadn't changed. Did I have to complete those long, difficult days of nothing but strife yet again? Teaming up with my friends, trusting each other, grappling with our suspicions of each other, believing in miracles, and fighting alongside everyone. All the coincidences in the world to help save us. If we missed any of those elements of the process, this world would end in horrific tragedy. I'd gotten past this dead end before. This is the second time, so I understood a little of how to fight against Takano's group. So I probably wouldn't have to spend another whole 100 years. Even still, it would definitely take several of those years, if not dozens. But I never wanted to spend another day in that June of 1983 ever again. The despair I felt at reaching the goal once, then getting kicked back to the start. I got into the man's car, and as it bumped over the rough roads, I sorted out the situation I was in. That day, in July 1983, I went to have a good time at the pool with everyone, and on the way home, there was an accident, and I died. And right before dying, I used the power I never thought I'd use again to turn back time once more. This world is probably in June of 1982. It was considerably hot, so the Watanagashi festival couldn't be far off. That meant the countdown to Satoshi's disappearance had already begun. Earlier in the nurse's office, he'd given me kind of considerate words, but an unyielding darkness would have been starting to take control of his heart, his fear of his inescapable terminal illness's footsteps. I thought back to how the Hojo siblings had looked in the nurse's office, and to Satoko and Satoshi's everyday sibling relationship. It would cease to be an everyday thing in just another few days or weeks. Satoshi's somewhat cold treatment of me had hurt. Satoko's. Fuck, wrong name. When I remembered that, I felt pity for her. Satoko. For now, at least, treasure that time. Your relationship with Satoshi is limited. That cruel fact hadn't been outruled a single time in any of those 100 years of worlds. In other words, it was inevitable. I can only sympathize with the fate awaiting Satoko now. Eventually, the Irie clinic came into view. Every time I saw it, I was struck by its magnificence. It was almost too much for Hinamizawa. But this time, the clinic building felt a little dull, as though affected by the sadness coloring my heart. The car came to a stop in the employee parking lot near the back entrance. Can you walk? Are you feeling well? Me? I'm perfectly fine. I don't think I need a brain scan. Head injuries are scary because some take a while to do anything. We'll play it safe and get you scanned. If it's nothing, you can go back for afternoon classes. This is the first time I met this strange doctor, but he didn't seem unreliable. Maybe the cloudiness in my expression made me look like I was worried my injury was serious, and that's why he tried to cheer me up. His attempt at encouragement was off base, but for now, I told myself that he wasn't a bad person at least. The air inside the clinic seemed unfamiliar to me. Inside, it was the same clinic as the one I knew, but something was different. On the whole, it felt odd, like I'd find cobwebs if I had looked. And I recognized none of the nurses we passed. The only people I knew were some elderly villagers chatting as they watched TV in the waiting room. Oh, is that you, Rika-chan? What happened? Do you have a cold? Someone during recess threw a ball and it hit the back of my head. Figured we should do a scan to make sure. Head injuries can be scary. But you're young, so I'm sure 1 or 2 balls to the head is nothing. The old people laughed aloud, as though rubbing some spit onto the bump would fix it. Something about their behavior was strange, too. The people I knew would get out their beads, start praying, and make a big fuss just because they got a bump on the head. Maybe they say 1 or 2 balls is fine because you're young, if I were a normal child. But for me in particular, and he and Mizawa, that was impossible. This all seemed very wrong. Something huge, something I couldn't ignore, was different about this world. Rika-chan, come in. After the large man went straight into the examination room, he called me in. The Queen Carrier had some blah 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 blah. Had come for an examination, and the next logical step was that Irie, the director, would appear, but he hadn't appeared yet. The discomfort I had been feeling this whole time got even stronger. And then I spotted something odd. It was a notice from the hospital, hung in the waiting room. Please be sure to bring your insurance card on your first checkup of the month. Takano Clinic. Huh? Takano Clinic? I looked around at the other notices hung about the waiting room. All of them had Takano Clinic written at the end. Not a single one said Irie Clinic. Where am I? Nika-chan, come on in. We're burning daylight. I heard the man's deep voice from the examination room again. I ignored him and burst out the front entrance. Why? Because I wanted to know. To know the name of the clinic. Takano Clinic. It looked exactly like the Irie Clinic I knew. But there it was, the answer to why everything felt so out of place. Where is this? I could feel the strength drain from my body. My legs gave out, and I sat, and for a while, I stared dumbly at the name that was inexplicably different. I'm not sure how long I stayed like that. I'm not sure how long... read that, wow. Eventually the big doctor from before and a nurse came running out. They asked me if I suddenly felt sick, and if I didn't answer, they would annoyingly get even more concerned. So, somewhat offhandedly, I lied that I felt a little dizzy for a moment. But they must have thought the vertigo pointed to a symptom of something. They picked me up and brought me into the examination room, hooked me up to an EEG terminal, and told me to rest. It's really nothing. I thought this would be annoying, so I tried to run away, then I tripped and fell. It's the doctor's job to decide if it's nothing. Please lay down until I say it's okay. Understand? Oh, did I right-click? I think so, yeah. I felt like the more I try to say, the more complicated things would get. So for now, I decided to play along so I could get out of there. Doctor. Is there a doctor named Irie here? What? Who did you say? Irie. Irie? Is that your family, Dr. Rika-chan? What hospital does he work at? We're getting nowhere. Is Irie not in this world? Compared to everything the other adults like Akasaka and Kasai did during the long battle of June 19, Irie's presence might have seemed to matter little, but it was extremely important that he was around. Without his determination to sever the chain of sadness created by Hinamizawa syndrome, there was essentially no way for Hinamizawa to break free of its 1,000-year curse. And Irie wasn't here. Plus, Irie was my only ally who knew I was the Queen Carrier. That ally was gone. The strange race off the coast was talking. The absence of my only ally from Tokyo, Irie. No doubt someone pleasant die had landed on a one. Then despite my ally Irie not being here, was Takano still behind everything? When you get one bad roll, you just get a bunch more. Dr. Takano passed away quite a while ago. The name comes from that splendid doctor who built such a wonderful clinic in this village. Someone I never had the chance to meet, but a splendid doctor if there was ever one, I hear. Splendid doctor? Would the occult-obsessed Takano ever be praised as a splendid doctor? And she passed away a while ago? When I looked around the examination room, I found a picture of some old people hanging in a frame. On it was written founder and first director Hifumi Takano. Hifumi Takano? Wasn't that the man Takano looked up to, who she called her grandfather? He was the first one to discover the Hinamizawa syndrome, but nobody accepted his theories about it, and he passed away in despair. Takano had understood his chagrin? I don't fucking know. and eventually made a big decision, then began to build a future so stable you could call it fate. That Takano? Another person named Takano? Not the founder? I can't say I know them. None of the nurses are named that anyway. Maybe it was the old nurse who retired before I got here? I don't think so. She's a young woman. There's nobody here by that name. If there was a nurse like that, I definitely want to work here. Want her to work here. Wahahaha. The man quaffed with delight. He certainly didn't look like he was lying. He was speaking the truth. And even Takano is gone? Irie was absent. Takano was absent. The Irie Institute didn't have its director or vice director. What did that all mean? Who was the director then? Oh, and what about the mountain dogs? The Irie Institute was, at its heart, a research institution. Without them acting as its hands and feet, it couldn't exist. Is there a landscaping company here called Okonogi Gardeners? Huh? Landscapers? Couldn't tell ya. Never had to call one of them myself. Wouldn't really know. Where are they from? I thought they had an office in Okonomiya. Why not look them up in a phone book later? Chagrin or chagrin, whatever. It's distress or embarrassment or a failure or humiliation. It can also be used as a verb. I mean, I kind of figured what it meant, but that doesn't tell me how to fucking read it. And I don't really care enough, so... Individual people sometimes don't show up in them, but I think most companies should be in there. Could the Irie Institute not exist in this world? Would that mean this world doesn't have a dead end at all? I couldn't figure anything out. Which dice were showing 1 and which were showing 6? Or was the stranger part of the dots on the dice themselves? The game board I was a piece on now, and the game board I knew, were they different? Let's be a little more optimistic. Was it possible that Tokyo hadn't chosen Irie, but this man instead? Then would this man know I was the queen carrier? If he did, then a number of things would fall into place. The prudence of giving me a brain scan after just getting knocked over by a ball to the head. Wasn't that because he knew I was special? That I was the queen carrier? Then, was this man playing the role of Irie in this world? I looked at the name tag on the rope he put on after coming into the room and read the name. Yamamoto. Yes? It was a natural response. It seemed the name Yamamoto wasn't a problem. Was this Yamamoto person the director of the Irie Institute? Or rather, the Yamamoto Institute? It was also possible that he crowned this clinic with the Takano name in commemoration of him succeeding Hifumi Takano's research. Yamamoto, do you know what the Hinamizawa syndrome is? The Hinamizawa what? Do you know Mommy being the queen carrier or anything? Queen? Rika-chan, you seem to me like you're still a princess. Do you want to be a queen when you grow up? You dream big. Okay, there we go. You could take it off now. I learned just from that short exchange that Yamamoto had nothing to do with the Hinamizawa syndrome. There were a few people connected to Tokyo and the Irie Institute too. But there were only a small handful of nurses and office workers. And besides, the queen character was currently in the clinic. Anyone connected to the Hinamizawa syndrome would have come rushing to me. How shit was Hinamizawa's healthcare beforehand that Rika thinks this level of care for a head injury is special? I don't know how to answer that, man. Yamamoto had rushed to me, but he didn't know I was the queen carrier. What did that mean? I listened hard to try and catch the sound of Irie's indiscreet laughter, but all I heard was the TV in the waiting room and the motor of the goldfish aquarium. The maid-obsessed man with his ulterior motives during checkups was nowhere to be seen in this examination room. It was simply uncomfortable, and the smell of dust and medicines made me feel unpleasant. Now I knew. This really wasn't the clinic I knew. It was a clear fact now. Yamamoto left for a moment, but came back and told me there was nothing wrong with my readings. If you feel alright, you can go back to school now. Afternoon class will start soon, so I can take you there if you need a ride. Can you go to school yourself? Meep isn't a yes or no. Which will it be? Yes. I'm fine. I can go back to school myself. I see. Then get going. I'll call Chie-sensei and tell her you're coming back. Oh. When I saw Yamamoto pick up the phone on the table, I spotted a tabletop calendar next to it. June. Showa 58? Showa 58. What was that in AD again? The Pacific War ended at Showa 20, which was 1945. 58 minus 20. I'm bad at borrowing, but luckily I don't need it. 58 minus 20 equals 38? Yes, 38 plus 20 is definitely 58. Then, if you add 38 to 1945, 45 plus 38 is 83. It's 1983? June? Wasn't that the same period of time I had just been living in? But, that's impossible. In June 1938, in 1983, Satoshi is here. Irie isn't here. Takano isn't here. Satoko is acting strangely, and even Hanyuu is gone. Where am I? Hanyuu, I know you're wasting time somewhere. Get over here with you ows and tell me what kind of world this is. I walked through downtown on my way back to school. All the storefronts were familiar. Nothing had changed. But for some reason, there were less people and more stores with their shutters closed. This apparent state of decline reminded me of New Year's or New Year's Eve. It was a strange sight during the season when you could hear cicadas crying. I barely passed anyone, and even when old people walked by, they didn't talk to me. Normally, if I met an old person in the middle of the day like this, they'd ask if I got a cold and was staying at home from school, or they start rubbing their prayer beads and saying weird things. There was none of that. Just like the old people in the clinic, they reacted with disinterest. I wasn't in the mood for it anyway, so I was thankful they didn't do any of that. But there was already a heap of oddities before me, and I couldn't help but feel like it was growing even bigger. Afternoon break was long over by the time I got back to school, and it was now time for afternoon classes. I went through the entrance and changed into my slippers, and then I noticed another strange thing. There were a lot of empty shoe cubbies. Empty was different from absent. Anyone enrolled would leave either the slippers or regular footwear in the locker, no matter what. If neither were present, that meant they weren't in this class to begin with. Sometimes people took their slippers home to wash during the weekends, but any lockers being empty during the day was unthinkable. I counted. A little over 10 pairs of shoes. That was only half of how many people were in the school I knew. Everything was so messed up. I had no idea what was going on. I sealed myself and opened the classroom door. Everyone turned around to look at me. There truly were only half of the familiar classmates there. And they weren't absent, because only half as many seats were actually in the classroom. Furude-san, please take your seat. Alright, everyone. This is class time, so focus on your drills. Chie clapped her hands, and everyone looked back down at their desk and workbooks, ignoring me altogether. My seat. Satoshi was sitting at the desk next to Satoko's. That doesn't seem to be my seat. Then where was it? Soon, I found an open seat, looking small and quiet in the back near the window. I could tell from the pattern on the floor cushion with my disaster hood in it. That seemed to be Rika Furude's seat in this world. It was in the corner, as though the classroom had forgotten about it. There was no seats next to it, and nobody would see it when looking at the blackboard, in a place where I wouldn't block anyone's view, whether or not I wasn't here. The seat was almost symbolic of how I had been feeling ever since I awoke. I sat down and took out my workbook. Then, pretending to study, I looked around the classroom. Mion Sonozaki was here. She didn't seem very different. And Rigu was here too. The way she was helping the child in the seat next blah blah blah, and the next seat over with his work was very like her. Satoko and Satoshi were studying together as friendly siblings. Satoshi, being the older brother, was teaching her things, but Satoko looked disgruntled, and her words went in one ear and out the other. To me, it was almost like she didn't hate studying, just didn't like the roles being reversed. Blah blah blah, since she looked after him at home, and it made me smile a little. I felt a tiny pain in my chest from Satoko's cold treatment of me in the nurse's office, but as far as I could tell by looking at her individually, she seemed totally normal. But I still couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong there. When Satoko was with Satoshi, she was often gloomy because of problems at home or the aunt's abuse, so they were acting like normal siblings, and though I knew it was rude to Satoko, that felt wrong. But if Satoko had a normal life, that was fine. The bigger shock, though, was the absence of the most important person in our group of friends. I looked around the room several times for him, but he wasn't here. Keiichi Mayabata wasn't here. I made multiple excuses, like how I wasn't saying right, or he happened to be absent today. But even the list of students on cleaning duty hanging on the wall didn't have Keiichi's name on it. Even in the class would have had their names on there, but Keiichi's wasn't. Keiichi Mayabata did not exist in this classroom, even though it was June of 1983 in this world. I see. On rare occasions, there would be a world where Keiichi hadn't moved here. It wasn't the first time, but it was a sad thing. Keiichi was an important key to crushing the fate of June 1983. If he wasn't on the game board, then this game was predetermined to be a loss. But was this even a game at all? No Irie, no Takuno, no signs of the Institute from Tokyo researching Hinamizawa syndrome. If none of them were here, didn't that mean there was nobody at all to fight? If I didn't need to fight, then, in a sense, Keiichi's absence wasn't an issue. Actually, in this case, June 1983 wasn't it fated to be a dead end, and, in other words, in this world, the 1,000 dice all turned up ones, and that changed the absolute fate Takano had constructed with her certain willpower into something else? I had no idea what was what. Could this world even be explained by what dots came upon the dice? Where am I? Someone, tell me. Obviously unable to focus during class, my head was filled with the listless cries of the cicadas, and the feeling of being out of place that I couldn't get rid of. Everybody stand up. Bow. Goodbye. Thankfully, Mion was still class president. For some reason, that was a relief. Oh. Was there even a club in this world? If I could receive the baptism of those crazy club games, maybe to clear up my feelings a little. On days we had club, she'd always call all the members right when school ended. Expecting that, I stayed in my seat as everyone ran out into the hallway. Satoko was one of those who dashed out. She was flying headlong towards the entrance, jostling the other kids her age. Satoshi left too, following behind her. Mion and Ren talked to each other as they got ready to leave. As far as it looked, we didn't have club. The club was annoying at times, but I yearned for it so much now. Was there no club in this world? As I started to feel lonely, I saw a grin spread across Mion's face before she and Rena approached me. Normally that grin would look gross, but when Mion did it, it didn't feel bad. Our eyes met. Thank goodness. Even this world had the after-school club it was supposed to. Hey, Rika-chama. Got a moment before you go home? Meep. Is it club? For the first time since coming to this world, I smiled. I had no idea what was going on in this world, so having one of my hopes come true made me very happy for the moment. No, not that. You're on duty tomorrow, right? Here's the logbook. And club. Huh? What? Did you want to be in my club too, Rika-chan? Meep. I gleaned two things from Mion's few words. One was that I still wasn't a club member. The other was that, even so, the club still existed. For me, right now, that was an incredibly happy thought. Then, Rika Furude, I hereby grant you permission to join my club. Mi-chan, you're being weird. And I laughed like it was a funny joke. But why? But even if you're in the same club, you still can't do club things with us. What? Why not? I mean, your house and my house are in the opposite directions, right? Me? Oh. When Mion said her club, she probably meant the club of not having a club, the going home club. And she must have been saying we went home in different directions, which was why I couldn't do club activities, going home together with her. In other words, the club doesn't exist in this world either. Mi-chan, can we have club activities with Rika-chan once in a while? But we go in opposite directions. Maybe it's okay from time to time. Maybe. After I realized I had blah 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 blah. After I realized I'd have to go home all alone, Rena said she'd leave school with me. That kind consideration was just like the Rena I knew so well. We didn't have club, but Mion and Rena were still Mion and Rena. Sorry, but I'll have to pass. I gotta get back quick for my job at my uncle's place. Oh, then Rika-chan and I will have our after-school going home club. Thank you, Rena. The three of us headed back for the entrance. Our outdoor shoes were the only ones left. There are less slippers here than I remember. Yes, I decided to naturally mention it. Rena responded right away. It's lonely, but what can we do? As they say, you gotta look for a nice big tree when you seek shelter. Anyway, sorry about this, but I'm gonna get going. Rena is such a doll when she isn't thirsting over KG. Facts. I'll leave Rika-chan's I'll leave Rika-chan's escort to you, Reina? Okay. Right. No? Yes? What is it? Nothing. Rena was the kind Rena I knew, but her name wasn't Rena. Reina. That was Rena's real name, but in the worlds I knew, she'd thrown it aside. Which meant she hadn't given up being Reina? Or her path leading to today was different from the one in the worlds I knew. I knew Rena hated herself because she considered herself responsible for her mother's divorce. And as she messed up her life, both her life and herself, she would have decided to part ways with that old self, start over, and rename herself Rena. But that didn't happen? That wasn't the only thing I learned from this conversation either. Regarding the number of people in this class, when I mentioned there wasn't many people, they acted like there was a reason. That meant the current number of students in this world hadn't been that way from the start. It had decreased to this number. Mion ran off, and Rena and I left school together. When we went across the schoolyard, I saw Satoko fooling around playing tag. Are you still looking at blah 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 blah? Are you looking at Satoko-chan? Me. Her name was different, but she still picked up on these things quickly. I'm sure Satoko-chan wasn't trying to be mean when she hit you with the ball. Pick up her, okay? I don't really mind. Rena. No. Reina seemed to be trying to smooth it over. It kinda sounded like Satoko and I weren't normally friendly with one another. So I asked, Are Satoko and I not friends? Of course you are. You're both from the same class. The way she said that was enough of an answer. Now I knew why Satoko acted so coldly to me in the nurse's office. In this world, Satoko and I weren't friends. Maybe that made sense. After all, if Satoshi was alive and well, then Satoko would spend all her time with him. The reason Satoko and I got to the point we could call close was because Satoko ended up all alone. I asked her to stay at my house, and we started living together. Of course, we were friends before that too, just nowhere near how close we were in 1983. Maybe, in the end, our relationship was something more than me sitting in Satoshi's empty seat. When I thought about that, when I considered what would happen if Satoshi was around in June 1983, maybe this was the most natural future. With regretful eyes, I watched as Satoko frolicked about. Satoko looked like she was having a lot of fun with her other classmates. She would never notice me going home from school. I'm going to stop thinking about it so much. Before the true world I need to reach, this world is all but a defective one. I don't need to bother trying to understand a broken world. There's a lot less stores open, too. When we were through downtown, with all its stores with their shutters down, Reina spoke up, my bad. I didn't care about this world anymore, but as a classmate going home with her, I answered unconsciously. I wonder why so many closed up. Well, it only makes sense. They can only do business until the next year anyway. They're getting less and less customers, too. It's not strange some would want to close up shop early. Why won't they do business after next year? They can't. They're getting evicted. Evicted? It sucks, but there's nothing we can do. And even if the village sinks, it won't destroy our souls, the ones that belong here. Ooh, I see. I gave a start when I heard that. No, it wasn't possible. In every single world, the story of Hinamizawa being submerged under an artificial lake was always present. But the Irie Institute, working from the shadows, would make sure that the dam project was cancelled. If there was no Irie Institute around to make them cancel it, that meant the dam project was proceeding as planned, and... then the dam will... I heard they decided to flood this area next year. I think it'll take a few days to submerge, but I don't really want to watch. Maybe after it's all a lake, but watching it go under would be sad. Wasn't anyone opposed to it? At first they were, but we couldn't be selfish when it comes to helping the nation grow. I don't really understand, but apparently the government people were really nice and talked to us a lot about it. The damn conflict I was hearing from Reina wasn't even a conflict in this world. Everything regarding the dam was completely different from the worlds I knew. They proposed the Hinamizawa Dam project, which is the same as the worlds I knew. Relations between the nation, who wanted to evict us, and the residents who refused, gradually worsened and eventually broke down. It snowballed into a dire conflict over the dam. But in this world, it had been different from the very beginning. First off, relations between the country and the village were stormy at the very, very beginning, but apparently that was resolved quickly. The Sonozaki and Kimiyoshi families negotiated on the village's behalf, and they accepted the eviction on the promise of a large sum of compensation money. After that, the conversation was between the three families and the villagers. Nobody wanted to part with their soil of their ancestors. But for the villagers, who certainly wouldn't be called wealthy, the money the nation would provide was no trivial matter. They worried over it to no end. Rumors flew about, wondering if Yashiro-sama's curse would befall them if they abandoned these lands. But the Furude family had, my father, in other words, declared we couldn't be cursed if we built Yashiro-sama a new shrine somewhere else and remembered to honor him. Despite many objections, the elderly agreed on a cooling-off period of several years. In addition to the compensation money, they demanded from the government the movement of the Furude Shrine, the graveyard, and its symbolic trees, in addition to the guarantee of a new place they could call Hinamizawa. And if those requests were fulfilled, they would consider agreeing to the eviction. The nation consented to this. They proposed preferential occupation rights to the reclaimed public housing land in Shishibone. With regards to giving the town a new name, they considered the residents' proposal as most important, and they consented to the movement of the shrine, graveyard, and other locations as well. In conclusion, though there were several years of turmoil, the dam conflict never happened in this world. Everything resolved through talking alone, and the villagers had actually agreed to the dam project. Actual conversation on the dam had begun a few years ago, and apparently construction vehicles were a constant source of traffic on the village's wider roads. And the eviction deadline was set at the end of April next year, so more than a few families had begun moving out in advance. One closed shop's shutter had a worn paper notice on it. On it written, "Our deepest gratitude for your many years of your patronage." I spotted a few other notices with a post to the dam on them, but those had deteriorated over time, a silent indication that the dam war was the thing of the past now. I don't think all of the kids in class are moving into the public housing. Satoko-chan's family is supposedly moving somewhere else. It's a little annoying to think we won't be able to see all our friends after next year. Meet. The village I was born and grew up in being submerged was very sad. But all my classmates enjoying this day to the fullest, even though they knew that it seemed so strong to me. And if the dam war never took place, that would cause several other effects. For example, the relationship between the Sonozaki and the Hojo families. At the beginning of the dam conflict, the Hojos declared themselves in favor of the dam, with the Sonozakis in opposition, and the former ended up a scapegoat of the village for a long time. But that trouble never occurred in this world. Satoko's-chan's family? I don't know. I think they're normal. I don't think they have much particularly in common with Mii-chan's family. Does Satoko get along with her family? Oh, you mean her father? Even without the dam conflict, the presence of a stepfather would be a burden on Satoko's mind. And with the L5 symptoms appearing, she would push him from the viewing platform at the park and be given into the care of her malicious aunt and uncle, because her stepfather's presence would be the very gateway to Satoko's later unfortunate fate. And when I think about it now, maybe their awkwardness with each other at the first made for a good memory. They aren't connected by blood, so they tried hard to be father and daughter, and maybe now they have a stronger bond than they would with her biological parents. I've talked to them a bunch of times, but he's a good person that works hard to support his family. You mean Satoko's current father? Yep. Which meant, in this world, none of the dice threatening Satoko had come up on a 1. For Satoko, did that make this world a happy place for her? My walk home with Reina was very significant for me understanding this world. And I found out this world's composition betrayed every last bit of my common sense. The reason Reina wasn't Rena, that was different from the very start. First, the Ryuga family didn't move to Ibaraki. They had lived in Hinamizawa this entire time. Her mother was still working as a designer at a small company in the city. Her father had switched careers, and now he was a salesman for his wife's designs. The couple must have been on good terms for one to design things and the other to sell them. As always, her mother's position seemed to be stronger, but the relationship was an average one, and of course, at the very least, it seemed impossible. That meant a nice, peaceful family for Reina. That satisfied her fully, and she even said that she lived a happy life. The fact that she knew that without going through hardships, though, she really was still Rena. Nice about the Takano clinic, too. It was the same as Big Dr. Yamamoto had said. The Takano clinic was indeed the one who had been Miyo's Takano's adopted grandfather, Ifumi Takano. Right after the war, he built a surprisingly grand clinic in Hinamizawa, which had no doctors and became a celebrity to the villagers. I learned that there was monument dedicated to Takano in the place of the one dedicated to Irie in the worlds I knew. After Takano passing, there was nobody to succeed his place in the clinic, and for a long time it had been left empty. That was when a man from Okonomiya named Yamamoto arrived and breathed new life into the clinic. Takano had discovered the Hinamizawa syndrome and searched for research sponsors but found none. And eventually, Miya Takano would succeed him. But what if the older Takano had found a sponsor? Neither Miya Takano nor Irie would appear, and the Takano clinic being built right after the war would make sense. Which meant that Takano, in this world, had been blessed with good dice rolls. At this point, I had a vague idea about something. Weren't these dice rolls the exact opposite of the ones for the world I knew well? The people themselves hadn't changed at all, but the dice God had cast for these people were all reversed. So it made sense that it had turned into such a strange world for me. I learned one more thing from talking to Reina, too. In this world, I had no friends. I was all alone. Keiichi never transferred to our school, we didn't have a club, and Satoko had no connection to me. So maybe it was only natural. At that point, I finally realized why Reina had sympathized with me going home and doing her going home club activities with me. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Huh? Oh, I see. For a moment I was confused when she said goodbye, since we weren't in front of the temple, but I quickly understood. We're in front of the Furude main house. Since Takano never appeared, there was no Irie Institute, nor any research into Hinamizawa syndrome, and so, my parents never died. At first, my parents cooperated with the researchers, but when I fell ill with a high fever one day, they stopped cooperating, had some kind of trouble, and were assassinated. Eek. Mother was the hysterical type, and when she made a fuss, settling her down took her a while. And because she made a fuss, the Irie Institute, which wanted to do its research in secret, naturally wanted to make sure she didn't talk. She held such an attitude even knowing how shady the Institute was. So in a sense, I couldn't deny that she reaped what she sowed. In any case, no matter how many times I did this over, no matter how many times I warned her, it never worked, and I resigned myself to the fact that I no longer have parents by 1981. And I repeated it many times. I'd seen my parents for dozens of years in total, so I was fed up with them. We weren't on good terms to begin with anyway. And now, in June of 1983, they were here again. I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye. Goodbye. Nipaaah. After seeing Reina off, I looked at my real home. I saw my mother patting out a dried futon in the yard. In normal words, they would always die, but in this one, they were alive the whole time. I found myself unsure of how to talk to my real mother. Is that you, Rika? Welcome home. Meep. I'm home. Go wash your hands and rinse out your mouth, and then get your books ready for tomorrow. Did you get any homework? Yes, she was my mother all right. Honestly speaking, I wasn't used to the Furude main house. It was my true home, but it had only been my home before 1983. Like a prisoner of time while I waited in melancholy for the day Keiichi transferred here. But Keiichi wouldn't transfer here, and my parents wouldn't die. Which meant in this world, I would never get out of this prison. But maybe that was a weird way to think about it. Without a dead-end fate, there was no victory or defeat, no destiny or miracles. This was actually my home. It was nothing more and nothing less. I went to my room, put down my book bag, and took a deep breath. Usually, when I was by myself, Hanyuu would appear. But in this world, she hadn't shown up. How long are you planning on wasting my time? Hurry up and appear and take me back to my original world. I knew by now this world was odd and filled with what-ifs. I'd had it up to here with my exploration of this alternate universe. But Hanyuu didn't appear. Oh, that's right. Hanyuu was by herself in the ritual storehouse a lot. Maybe she was there right now. In any case, whatever else happened, I just wanted to see Hanyuu. I put on my shoes and ran out toward the shrine. As I turned my back on my annoying mother who called after me, asking if I really rinsed out my mouth. In a world where my father was alive, it was hard to get the key to the storehouse. But thanks to the innumerable worlds, God, that's a word, I'd been through, I found a way to get in the storehouse without it. I could hear the elders having a pleasant talk in the assembly hall. My father's laugh mixed in with theirs. My father hated me ever going near the ritual storehouse. Well, considering what it stored, I could sort of understand why he wouldn't want to let his beloved daughter inside it. After making sure nobody was looking, I climbed up a tree without growing behind the storehouse. My climb didn't go as smoothly as when Satoko had shown me she could do it. In any case, I crawled up stubbornly and jumped down onto the storehouse roof. I can word so good. I was a little scared of jumping. I climbed pretty high off the ground. Even a Stuncharian witch can't escape the danger of heights. If I recalled right, there's a broken lattice window on the roof, and you can get in and out through there. This world was betraying all my expectations. It gave me the exact opposite. I considered that maybe you couldn't go in and out through it anymore. But in the place Hatoko once told me about, it was broken just like she said, and a child would be able to fit inside. Even trivial things like this were a relief. Maybe just the sun setting in the west would be a relief for me right now. Because in this world, it could always set in the east. Yes, this discomfort I felt at having to doubt everything made me feel dizzy and sick. Hanyuu? Hanyuu? Are you there? No answer. I was too afraid to call out again, because maybe if I did, I still wouldn't get any answer. For me, personally, Hanyuu not existing in this world was the one dice roll that couldn't happen. Hanyuu? Hanyuu! Then I felt something I couldn't describe. The presence of someone, but not a person. Something only I could perceive. The presence of Hanyuu. But Hanyuu always answered me when I called for her. She wasn't now. What did that mean? But she was here. She was! I couldn't help poking my head through the roof. I climbed down a bundle of hanging chains and entered. Hanyuu! Hanyuu! Where are you? Answer me! Rika, where are you? This time I heard her for sure. There was no doubt. Hanyuu, I'm right here. Where are you? I can't see you at all. Rika, answer me. Hanyuu's feeble words implied she was actually the one who couldn't hear my voice. I looked for a place where I could hear her better. Before I realized it, I went to the altar in front of the holy vessel. Something that looked like a small crystal ball was on the altar, and I sensed it giving off a faint light. That was where Hanyuu's voice seemed to be coming from. The ball was about the size of a large toy marble, but it was seated respectfully on a small cushion, which told me it was no ordinary stone. I took the crystal ball in my hand and pressed it to my ear. Rika, if you can hear me, please answer again. Rika. There was no doubt. I was hearing Hanyuu's voice from this crystal ball, and it sounded like it was searching for me, growing more distant all the while. Hanyuu, I can hear you. It's me, Rika. I'm right here. Rika. I can hear your voice. Where are you? I can't find you. Your voice is so distant. I don't understand. Please, call louder. I'm here. I'm right here. Why can't I hear your voice from this crystal ball? Wait, no, that's not important. I'm right here, right in front of the altar in the storehouse. Hanyuu. I can hear your voice. I'm searching for you now. Please don't let go of the fragment. Keep on calling my name. Louder. I'm here. Hanyuu. Come hurry. Hanyuu. For a while I kept shouting her name as if I'd gone mad. It was like clinging to a tin can telephone right before the string snapped. If Hanyuu's voice caught up in the middle, she left me behind, alone, in the darkness of the storehouse. That was scarier than anything else I could imagine. So, as she told me to, I shouted her name over and over again. Hanyuu had to be searching for me by listening for my voice. I didn't know what her situation was, but it seemed like Hanyuu and I were far away from one another. They were immeasurably distant. and as the crystal ball's light strengthened, I knew she was coming closer. At first, the light I sensed from it had been faint, but now it was bright as a weak miniature light bulb, and I could clearly see it was shining. Rika, what's going on? I can't enter the world you're in. What? What are you saying? I'm the one who needs help here. I don't get here, just come here. Take me out of this world. Rika, please listen carefully. For some reason, your world rejects me. This should be impossible. Given that she's both a paranormal existence and a deity, I couldn't imagine any situation that would make her anxious enough to her to weakly say, this is impossible. All I could do was keep on wailing, half insanely, for her to do something. Anything. But I can't do anything. Oh. This is the first time. This is impossible. Stop acting so miserable and hurry up and do something already. Anything. I can't, Rika. Your world is giving off a power that rejects me. If you don't do something about that, there's nothing I can do. Stop saying things that make sense. What do you mean, a power that rejects you? You're a deity. That can't be. You're right. It can't be. But there's no fragment on this side, so I can't line up the pieces. I don't know how, but the fragment is lost somewhere in your world. Fragment? What do you mean? Explain it so I understand. I'll do anything I can. Continue to exit her when she won't help with anything. I managed to figure out what Hanyuu wanted to say, and now I knew how to eliminate the obstacle. The situation utterly escaped me, but it seemed like if I didn't do something, Hanyuu couldn't appear in front of me. I'm sorry for losing my composure. I'll calm down now, so explain again, please. What on earth is going on? Rika. I don't know why this is, but part of a fragment, which should be in the world of the gods, seems to be lost in the world you're in right now. As an analogy, it's like the key you need to unlock a door being locked inside that room. What's a fragment? What appears as the world to you is called a fragment in the higher dimensions. We've been connected to these fragments like a jigsaw puzzle to walk between worlds. I see. I think I understand the analogy. The world I'm in now is a fragment. A piece of a jigsaw puzzle, but something happened to the part that connects to the rest, and it won't fit with the pieces around it, right? That's right. That missing piece always has to be on this side. But now, for some reason, it's on that side instead. The fragment should be in the world of the gods, but for some reason it fell into the human world, and now it's missing? That's about right. Oh. Alright. I just have to do something about that fragment, right? I'll do what you say. Where is that fragment? What should I do with it? Is this really the time to be owling? The freaking old sprites on the center fragment. Oh, I didn't even notice that was the old sprites, to be honest. Where is that fragment thing? And what does it look like? No. I don't know. What? How am I supposed to search for it if you don't know? I don't understand either. From here I can only hear your voice. I can't interfere at all with that world as I am now. But if it's called a fragment, then will it look like a glowing piece of crystal like this? I think that's probably right. But I can't even imagine what shape it would take if something that belonged in a higher dimension ended up in a human world. I felt all my energy drain out of me, and I heaved a sigh. We don't know what it even looks like. This is the worst. Anyway, if I do find it, what would I do? How would I get back into the world of the gods? How? You don't even know that? I'm sorry. This is the first time this has happened. I don't really know either. I laughed mostly at myself, and before I realized it, I couldn't stop my tears from falling. As in spoiled? I'm a little confused what you mean by that, but that's okay. After getting sent to this crazy world, I didn't even know how to get back. Today of all days. I was in such high spirits, going to the pool with my friends. That tiny fragment of happy days we'd all finally obtained after escaping the dead end of June 1983. And just because I was messing around on the way back, just a little, I got sent to this horrible world. But if I'm going to complain about that, in the end, it's my own fault for not being careful on the road, isn't it? Oh, oh. I lost my balance on my bicycle, got thrown off, and then fell into the car there. A common traffic accident. A common death of a child. It just happened to me this time. The future I went over after a few hundred years. Not a few hundred years. After only 100. My bad. A little exaggeration there. Now, just because of that, everything was in pieces. I could bet all I want, but the only thing at fault was my own carelessness. In fact, I should be thankful to Hanyuu for letting me live. But sending me to a world like this, it's too cruel. No, it wasn't as though Hanyuu sent me here because she wanted to. I know that. It's like you remember, Rika. Our power has been wearing away. And with the last of that power, we reached our victory. So you were never supposed to be able to use it again. You mean you used that power to save me? Yes. There's nothing else I could do. Rika, your body flew off a bike, and if the dice had to come up better, you might have fallen on the car and made it out injured but alive. But you were unlucky when you flew off. You landed right in front of the car's tires. From Hanyuu's words colored with sadness, it felt like she'd watched me fly off, get run over by the car, and die. Everyone had their mouths wide open, in a daze. The car's brakes screeched as it crashed into the guardrail, but nobody was listening. And then, Satoko, she ran over to you, but you looked... Oh... Your face was gone. Ugh. The car crushed my head flat. She was always talking about this, wasn't she? Never to play on the road. I can imagine the rest of the story without Hanyuu telling me. That fun day we had was wiped out in an instant by my careless fooling around. We dove past into the longest June 1983 of these past 100 years, and the peaceful future we finally reached through the sharing of countless miracles was wiped out in an instant. My corpse was too horrible to look at. Satoko came running over first, and then everyone else came, and they all wished they'd woke up from that nightmare until they lost all hope, broke down and wept. Compared to that heart-splitting sadness, the one who was actually careless, grumbling about wanting to go home since this world was uncomfortable, counted for nothing. That mean, in the end, it was all my own fault. I struggled through so many years to reach that future, and I carelessly lost it by nobody's fault but my own. And I was blessed since Hanyuu was there for me, so I should be thankful. Because if that happened to someone other than me, they'd just lose their life, and nothing more. Just the fact that there was hope, even if it was only a single tiny ray, surely meant that I was fortunate. Thanks. Well, idiots die in accidents from carelessness all the time in Japan, and I was one of them. I should have just died without complaints, but thanks to you, even though things have gotten strange, I'm alive. And I'm sure it will be really, really hard, but there is still a way to return to that world. Oh. Let's review. To bring me back to the original world, Hanyuu, you need to come here, right? Yes, of course. I want to return to the original world with you, Rika. Naturally. We won that world after over 100 years of struggle, and we're going back. I would spend another 100 years to do it. I won't lose. I won't lose heart. Just for fooling around a little on the road and being sentenced to another 100 years. That won't make me cry. Rika, even in the world beyond, everyone is praying for you. They're praying that, even if it costs them their lives, that you turn back time and make it so the accident never happened. I think those prayers were why I was able to find you, Rika. in the storehouse, in which I could smell only dust. I thought I caught the scent of incense. I couldn't see it, couldn't hear it, but somehow I knew. It was my funeral, and I thought I could hear them. My friend's heartbroken grieving over my coffin. Fucking Higurashi when the readers cry, more like. Their cries were incredibly sad. So sad. So painful. As though it would tear me apart. I understood. My carelessness. It had destroyed not only my life, but everyone else's happiness. I'll go back. I'm going back. I'll return to that world no matter what. Ooh. No matter how narrow that path may be, I'll do it. I'll go back for sure. My tears, filled with sadness, mixed with determination, mixed with saltiness, dropped to the floor. Rika, being locked in that world is the same as the dead end of 1983. It may look like an inescapable fate, but you absolutely can escape it. I know. Keiichi taught me that. And even Takano taught me that too. Fate was thinner than a goldfish's coping net. And strong enough feelings can reshape the future. That's right, Rika. That's the spirit. It was because of your carelessness. But you've been given the chance to atone for it and make it go away. That's really, really lucky thing. I know. Normal people wouldn't be starting over in their next lives, but I alone got one chance. I know what that means. Rika, I want you to somehow find the fragment rejecting me. I'll see if I can figure anything out in this world. I'll have to make do without any hints. Also, as long as you aren't in this world, if I die here, that's the end, right? Yes. My power doesn't affect that world right now. So please, Rika, be really careful. I know. I'll never fool around on the road again. We don't have any hints, but I'm this village's deity, and this village is all I've ever watched over. If this world can interfere with me, then I think I shouldn't have clicked that early. If this power can interfere with me, then I think the power must be in the village too. There it is. Somewhere in this village. If it has anything to do with you, to be honest, I think it would be this ritual implementation storehouse. Rika, is there anything in the storehouse that isn't in the usual worlds? I don't know. I can't tell right away. There's no proof it would be obvious, right? If it's enough to interfere with me. Rika, you stepped into places incredibly close to the world of the gods before, so you might be able to sense it. Another thing to worry about. I don't think anything on this altar, including this crystal ball, has changed at least. But this is a strange crystal ball. It's interesting how, for a mere marble, it's on display in such an important place. Right now you're holding the Hanyuu Shrine treasure, the Kamo no Mikoto Nori. Long ago, when I performed a miracle at the Hanyuu Shrine, I left it there as proof. After such a long time, most of the power inside is gone, but luckily for us, it's the only source of power I have that affects you. If I had more power, or if I could prevail against this, I might have been able to go to the world you're in. Which means, I'll only be able to talk to you through this crystal ball for a limited time. Yes. Rika, can you hear my voice? From here, your voice sounds like it's slowly fading away. I get it. It's like a transceiver about to run out of battery power. Alright, I won't talk to you unless it's important. That way, we can talk for a little bit longer, right? Probably. Then that's enough. I'll rummage around the storehouse now. It could be hidden anywhere if it's the same size as this crystal ball. And it might not be in the storehouse either. I'm going to need perseverance for this job. Rika, please do your best. All I can do is stay here and cheer for you. And even the words I can use for that are limited now. It's fine. Mark my words, I'll open the door to this world and invite you in. I promise we'll go back to that fun world together. So do your best too. If you learn anything that could be a clue, tell me. I will. Then that's it. I'm going to stop talking now. See you again, Hanyuu. Oh. I promise. Once we get back to that last world, I'll fill the refrigerator with cream puffs for you. Oh, I'll look forward to that, promise. Hanyuu's voice gently vanished, like water seeping into sand. But that didn't mean Hanyuu had vanished. It was kind of like I was talking to Hanyuu on a public phone, and my 10 yen ran out. We may have been in different worlds, but we were cooperating, trying to get out of this world and back into the last one. When I thought about it, Hanyuu had always been an ally in my life. In this world, that ally was gone. Maybe that was a fitting punishment for wasting my life by being careless. To get back to the last world, I will pile up as many stones as I needed to, for those were the banks of the river of Styx. Nirvana, from my viewpoint, was one who had lost her life in a previous world. But I'll get back, I swear, I'll get back there. But suddenly, the inside of the storehouse brightened. Someone had just turned on the switch for the naked bulb hanging from the ceiling. And then, with a heavy clank, the door opened. My father appeared there. His face was like a demon's. That was right. I'd entered the cordoned off ritual implement storehouse. I only received the right to enter the storehouse when I succeeded them as the head of the Furude family. In other words, in a world with my parents alive, I wasn't allowed to come in here. Rika, how did you get in here? How many times have I told you to never enter the storehouse? My father was in a rage. Thanks to the property imprinted into one's very genes that made children tremble when their father looks at them with a scary face, I reflexively cringed with fear. He grabbed me by the back of my neck and took me outside. When I ended up being disciplined, something I'd forgotten for a long time. I read that very wrong. Then I ended up being disciplined, something I'd forgotten for a very long time. My parents being here is such a bother. Just when I thought I'd been lucky that they made it through the year 1981, they're getting in the way of me returning to the final world. In the storehouse, I've been shouting Hanyuu's name pretty loudly, so he probably noticed. I would investigate the storehouse for real tomorrow, but I'd have to take extreme caution so that my father didn't find me. In the middle of the night, unable to sleep face up on the futon because of my rear end swelled up from all the spanking, I bit my pillow and cried again. Then thought back over what I had to do. This is my room. This is my futon. But this isn't where I was supposed to sleep. The futon I was supposed to go home to was in the small house on the second floor of the renovated warehouse, the one next to Satoko's. But in this world, the youth group was probably still using it as a meeting place. So my futon obviously wouldn't be there. Then, what futon were I supposed to use in this world? Punishment for doing something stupid and careless, bringing the future be all one to nothing. I needed to find what was keeping Hanyuu away so I could call her here. It would take a lot of effort. For that reason, I needed to build up my energy and get some sleep. Shedding tears was nothing but a waste of time and stamina. I knew that, but until I fell asleep, I wept into my pillow. Oh god, there's still more? I'd hoped Satoko would be there when I woke up that morning. I hoped this baffling world was just a half-awake dream of mine. So when I awoke, not to a familiar ceiling, but to the one of the Furude main house. Thank you, dog. I could feel nothing but disappointment. My mind hazy, I recalled the situation I'd been put into. Thanks to my own carelessness, I gotten lost in this strange world. Hanyuu's power couldn't reach here, so it would be incredibly difficult to escape. It was like trying to climb up the spider's thread to paradise. But the spider's thread was still there. No matter how thin it was, its presence meant there was still a chance to discover what was blocking Hanyuu's power. And I didn't even know what it looked like. The only possible clue was that Hanyuu was the deity of Hinamizawa, so it was probably in the village somewhere. I picked up the crystal ball, which I snuck out of the ritual implement storehouse. The ball gave off a weak and somehow unnatural light. I pressed it to my forehead, and I could sense a faint presence that only I, as a witch, could feel. I was sure that whatever I needed to find, I would get the same feeling from it as this. But again, like the crystal ball, I'd probably have to hold it to my forehead to sense anything. It didn't seem like things would be as simple as wandering about until I felt something. But if it was related to Hanyuu's power, like that crystal ball was, it was almost certainly in that storehouse. Unfortunately, the storehouse is a complete mess of everything from ancient torture devices to piles of old documents to mountains of trash I didn't even know how to use. The only place with any semblance of cleanliness was the space around the vessel and the altar. Finding anything, especially an object as small as this crystal ball, would be no simple matter. "Rika, eat your breakfast and hurry on to school," I heard my mother's voice from the kitchen. The school in this world wasn't the one I went to. If I had the time to go somewhere I didn't belong, then I should be using it to search the storehouse. But there's no proof my search would only take 1 or 2 days. I really hate you to say it, but since I didn't even know what it looked like, maybe I need to prepare myself for the search to take years. If I didn't go to school, Che, ever conscientious, would call the house to see if I was staying home that day. If that happened, it would cause trouble with both the school and my parents. I couldn't imagine how much time the search would take. If my parents grew suspicious, things would get harder. Slow and steady wins the race, I guess. Although it was frustrating, for weekdays, it would be better to pretend I was going to school like normal. I let out a languid sigh, got up, and decided to eat breakfast. During mealtime, my mother's ramblings about how I was never allowed to go into the ritual storehouse again suddenly made the food taste worse. My mother was always insistent and long-winded. I hated this part of her. The elders in the village laughed and said she couldn't help it, since she did it only for her only beloved daughter, but to me, she was just a nuisance. Tough love wasn't what I needed at the moment. The only thing I could be thankful was, maybe, that I didn't have to make breakfast for myself. But I could do it on my own, so I almost would have rather she left it to me. After I was done eating and started getting ready for school, my mother continued to nag me about making it on time. How aggravating. Maybe going to school wasn't so bad. I wouldn't have to see my mother's face for half a day. I thanked her for the food, cleaned my plate and utensils in the sink, and left immediately for school. If everything was going to betray my expectations anyway, I wish class would too. But even in this world, class went the exact same way as the world I knew. Though I'd escaped that world and now it was repeating, thinking that it made me feel even more listless. Normally I'd distract myself by teasing Satoko, but her seat was far away from mine. She was probably also so bored with class she didn't even know what to do with herself. Satoshi, earnestly studying in the seat next to her, was constantly trying to get her to focus. Mion seemed to be butting into Reina's business too. But they weren't fooling around. It was a strange though pleasant sight. They were helping one another learn. Actually, they weren't the only pleasant sight. Everyone in the classroom was like that. I felt like I was the only one left out. I didn't know whether my seat was in its own row because of the odd number of students, or if I had chosen the seat on purpose in this world, but it felt like my seat was separated from the rest of the classroom. When lunchtime came, I felt even more alienated. My classmates formed groups with friends and took out their food. The club members who would always eat with me weren't here. Satoko was part of a circle of several friends, including her brother. There was no place for me to wedge myself into. Mion and Reina were sitting face to face as they ate. No room for me there either. Nobody asked me if I wanted to eat with them. And they had fun eating their own meals, so this seemed natural, like it was something that happened every day. For a short while, I waited, hoping for Satoko or Mion or Reina to invite me over. After the clock's minute hand moved 5 and then 10 places, I realized I might have been left behind in eating, and finally gave up and opened my bento box. Inside were the leftovers of last night's burned hamburger steak and white rice with nori seaweed that was now sticky, spinach wrapped with gooey nori, and the remains of kinpira with chopped burdock root, also burned. I guess I'd forgotten about that. For some reason, my mother overcooked everything. "Summer is dangerous if you don't let the heat in," was a favorite phrase of hers. She would cook steaks until they were rock hard, and even when she made fish, she turned half their insides to ash. Even Satoko was better than that, unless she knew how to cook things. And when I learned how to make food from Hanyuu and started to make things better than my mother, she must not have been happy. It tasted terrible too. No presentation either. If Mion decided to have a bento contest and I only had this, I'd end up in last place. But there was no club in this world, so I didn't have to worry about that. Satoko's happy laughter not being directed at me made me feel sad. Suddenly, our eyes meet. Did my feelings get through? Satoko burst out of her seat and glared at me. "What are you staring at? If you have something to say it. I don't have anything to say." "Stop it, Satoko. You just happened to look at each other, didn't you?" "It didn't just happen. She was staring at me this whole time. It was getting gross. Come on." Satoko and her friends began whispering amongst themselves while looking at me. I couldn't hear what they said, but I could easily imagine them enjoying themselves. "I'm sorry. I won't stare at you." "I hope not. You're making my cream croquettes taste worse." I angled my desk a little so I couldn't see Satoko and the others. At first, I had called this world Satoko cold, but it looked like I was mistaken. This world Satoko's either didn't like me or outright hated me. And the other kids close to my age seemed to have formed a community around her, with no place for me in it, so they all hated me too. The hardened, ash-like steak tasted of salt. Why did I have to feel this sad and lonely when I ate? In all the other worlds, all the club members would be enjoying lunch together. Satoko would be there, and Rena, and Mion, and Keiichi. Everyone would be having fun and spending their break cheerfully and noisily. That was when Rena came over and peered into my bento box. "Yuka-chan, you have steak and spinach for lunch today? That looks good." It was clear that Rena had come over to try and comfort my distress, but for some reason, that was frustrating, so I didn't answer her. When I stayed silent, she held out an octopus-shaped sausage in front of me. "I'll trade your spinach for my octopus, okay?" Rena, trying to be nice as I ate lunch alone, hated by my classmates, I just couldn't accept it. I suddenly said I was going to wash my hands, then laughed in a bathroom stall. I covered my face with toilet paper and cried. The tears soaked through the paper and crinkled it up, but I didn't care. This was fine. It was better if I didn't have any friends in this world. I had plenty of friends, and the one I needed to return to. There, even Satoko is my irreplaceable best friend, and all the club members who would never leave me alone during lunch hour were waiting for me. Why would I be sad that some Satoko I didn't know was being mean to me in a world I didn't care about? Why would I be... But despite the lies I told myself, I couldn't stop crying for a while. I decided to steel my resolve and wait for school to end. Then I run back home, say I was going out to play, and sneak into the ritual implement storehouse again. That was the only way I could get back to my original world. I had to try and do my best for that purpose alone. Okay. I looked into the mirror in the bathroom to see her face red from crying. If Chie saw me like this, things would probably get even more complicated. I washed my face and spent the rest of lunch break quietly in a corner of the classroom. After school, I literally dashed out of the building. It would be a huge pain if I ended up caught in the rush of the other classmates as they headed out to go play. I think Satoshi called out after me, but I ignored him. He was probably just trying to apologize for his sister about what happened during lunch. I didn't care about that. I didn't want to stay in this horrible world a second more than I needed to. I ran full speed back to the house, ignored my mother when she asked, as usual, if I had any homework, and searched for a lantern. Then I told her I was going out to play, and without waiting for a response, burst out of the house. Then I went around the shrine and looked for my father. I saw a note hanging on the assembly hall that said there was a shrine association meeting. I could hear my father's voice amidst the light-hearted chatter. It was the same opportunity I had yesterday. Today, I have to be careful not to let on I was inside. After making sure nobody was looking, I climbed up the tree I got in the hang of yesterday. I've been scared of that height before, but I wasn't afraid any longer, probably because I cried my eyes out and resolved myself during lunch. What I really had to be afraid of wasn't heights or my parents or the cold-hearted Satoko. It was not being able to return to my original world. The next scariest thing would be losing contact with Hanyuu, I think. In the darkness of the storehouse, I took the crystal ball out of my pocket. Its sweet glow seemed a little more energetic than yesterday. Maybe if she rested, a little of her power would come back. Nevertheless, it was still weak. If I wasted it out on the fruitless conversation, the light might go out entirely. I firmly squashed down the desire to check and make sure I could still call her and turn on the lantern. It was time to go treasure hunting. Was there anything around? Anything only I could feel? Suddenly felt the same as this crystal ball, somewhere. I closed my eyes, held to my senses, and hoped. But all I heard were the cries of cicadas. I hadn't expected anything else. It looked like this would be a tough nut to crack. Too optimistic. Searching the entire storehouse, how much time would that take? I didn't want to imagine it, but I had to do it or I couldn't go home. I do it systematically. Start in the corner and go in order. Without knowing what it looked like, I'd start in the corner and go from there, not even letting water past. And despite all that, I had no proof it was even in here. I felt like it would be easier to just fight Takano and the mountain dogs again. I don't think it's going to get any weaker. I can hear your voice about as loudly as I could before. Which means, like always, I'll only get to you weekly. I guess there's no need for us to chat. No, I think chatting is exactly what you need to do right now, Rika. Maybe. Thanks. We'll talk now. I'm pretty sure I searched this storehouse as well as I could, but I have nothing. I searched for about a week, and I don't even know what the thing I'm searching for looks like. And even if I did find it, I might have put it down again without realizing. Oh. Honestly, this is really hard. If only I knew what it looked like. Or had some proof it was in this storehouse. Being locked in here for so long is going to make me go crazy. I understand. I know it's a very difficult search. I'm doing my best too, to see if I can at least find out what the fragment looks like. And? Did you find anything else? Rika, in your world, fragments are interpreted as feelings. When those feelings reside in something, they become fragments. I understand the logic, but that doesn't give me much of a hint. Oh. And as for how to return the fragment to this world, I think that it needs to lose its form in that world. What does that mean? Do they have to break it? Yes, and completely. If it's lost from the human world, then you could send it to the world of the gods. Do you know about the law of conservation of matter? It's possible to destroy something completely. Well, that's why I'm saying you only need to destroy its form. Understand, Rika? Even in ancient times, people used methods like this to send things to the gods. I see. Alright. A way ancients send tributes to the gods. A way to get rid of something from the human world. You're telling me to burn it. Burn it into ash and send it into the sky. That's right. By burning something to ashes, it loses its form, loses its meaning, and vanishes from the human world. I see. So I need to burn whatever is housing the fragment. I pray that it's easy to set on fire. If it was a boulder, I have to throw it into a blast furnace or something. Actually, Rika, the fragment might not only be in an object, it's possible it could be in a person too. I see. Because the fragments are feelings. They might not only reside in objects, but Hanyuu, if it was a person, what would I do? You're not telling me to burn them to ash, I'm sure. The meaning of a human disappears the moment they lose their life. That would make sense. Corpses aren't people anymore. So the fragment is residing in a person. Oh. I'd believed until now I'd been searching for an object, but maybe it doesn't even have to be that. I'd have no problem burning an object, but if it wasn't an object but a person... I don't like this world. For some reason only the bad ideas turn out to be true. I can only pray it doesn't turn out like that. If only bad ideas could turn out to be true, then I could take advantage of that and search there first. If it was a person, they'd be closely connected to Yashiro-sama, right? Yes, most likely. Is it possible it's me? No, it isn't. If you were the fragment rejecting me, you wouldn't be able to talk to me right now. Which means... Next is my father, head priest of the Furude Shrine, and my mother, carrier of the Furude lineage. If it was one of them, I just have to kill them, right? Oh. My human morality refused the idea of killing my parents. But there was nothing a world-crossing witch needed to think about. For someone with a true world somewhere else, this was a false world, meaning it was the same as a dream. Murdering someone in a dream was no different from doing it in a delusion or a daydream. There was nothing to consider about committing the sin in this world. Honey was making sad ow ow sounds, so I told her how I felt. Stop being such a hypocrite. Would you rather give up on returning to our original world? Oh. You're a coward. You're going to force me to dirty my hands while never dirtying yours. Convenient, isn't it? If you can blame it all on one person, nobody else will be marked with sin. I'm the perfect human sacrifice. I felt those words were a little harsh on Hanyuu. For a short while, she remained silent, not saying anything. But her breathing made it sound like she wanted to say something, but was hesitating. I want to go back to the final world. Rena said this once. I wonder how happy we're allowed to struggle in order to be happy. I didn't think there was a limit to that effort. But Keiichi changed that. There's no limit to effort. But you have to talk to a lot of people to get their advice on whether your efforts are misplaced or not. That's why I was talking about it with Hanyuu, the only one who shared my current situation. And Hanyuu said that if the object possessing the fragment was a person, I had to kill them. I would want to avoid that, of course, if there were any other way. But if she said that was the only way, then I wouldn't hesitate. That was all. I want to go back to... Yeah, me too. I'll be frank that the fragment isn't held by a person. Please, do. I will too. And I apologize. I was too hard on you. All I can do is look for clues and keep my spirits up so I don't get discouraged. I didn't understand how annoying it must be to not be able to look for the key yourself. It isn't as hard as it is for you, Rika. The only thing I can do is at least be here to care for you so that your heart doesn't tire out. Thanks. These idle chats with you are the most enjoyable thing about this world. It's like I wake up from the nightmare for a few minutes. Ow. I see. I still understand why she said chatting could be important. Honey was the only one I could talk to from my original world. If I lose contact with Hanyuu, maybe my very connection to that world would weaken, and my memories would blur, and that would simply give birth to a miserable, broken-hearted girl living a delusion in this world that wasn't the one she belonged in. Leave it to me. Ezra will go back there together. You can keep looking around for any clues you can find. If there are any developments on my end, I'll contact you again. I understand. Rika, hold it together. Go for it. Yay. Remember? Yay. I couldn't hear on you anymore. The crystal's ball light had grown weaker than ever. But as long as I had its the otherworldly glow, then I could keep believing that this wasn't the world I was supposed to live in. Before I might have shed a tear or two by now, but all the tears I could cry had dried up. I gripped the crystal ball tightly, savoring the cheer Hanyuu had given me. Do your best. Go for it, yay. I moved over to a spot with a pile of old documents. If it could interfere with Hanyuu, it had to be related to the legends of Yashiro-sama. So maybe, I thought, a clue would be written in one of the documents on that pile. Maybe if another thing I searched for wasn't in here, I could find a clue to it instead. I took a few documents from the pile and packed them into a knapsack I brought with me. I could read some, but couldn't understand any of the others. If something important was in one of the indecipherable ones, I would have no way of knowing. But I shouldn't think about that right now. I pulled out the few documents I could read and decided to read them in secret at school and in bed. As I went in and out of the storehouse, the chances of my parents finding out increased. In that sense, this would lower that risk, which made it easier for me. Maybe parents did understand their children best and would be the first ones to help them. But that was when they were normal and not a witch like me. If their daughter started babbling about not being from this world, they'd probably tie her down and summon a noisy ambulance. If I were a little more cunning, I could flatter my parents and put the work in them and to make this world a little more bearable. But the more I thought about this world not being the one I lived in, the more apathetic I felt towards interacting with the people who were here. That was probably why it seemed like I was being more and more isolated in class. Of course, maybe you could say that was my own fault. That was the kind of world this was at the moment I arrived. I won't dare let anyone say that this isn't my fault. I won't dare let anyone say that this is my fault. Of course, not a single person could tell me the difference between Rika Furude and me, anyway. Who is me? The me that isn't Rika Furude. Who is she? I came around to quite an electronic beep. I looked at my watch and noticed it was already evening. Being in here made me lose track of time. The other day I was out way past curfew and was scolded for a long time. The alarm on my watch was to prevent that. Letting my relationship with my parents grow any worse would make everything else more troublesome. I should call it quits for today. With practice motions, I climbed the bundle of chains and headed through the exit on the roof. When I returned to the main house, surrounded by the cries of the Higurashi that I'd grown completely tired of, there was this tightly packed case of beer near the front door, and 3 bottles of wine. The beer case was probably for a drinking party at the Shrine's assembly hall or something. My father didn't drink beer because he liked it, so I knew it had to be for the assembly hall. They delivered it here before the party so he could chill it beforehand in the assembly hall refrigerator. And that wine probably belonged to my father. My father enjoys Western spirits and wine most of all. And wine, at the same time, was something I enjoyed as well. Before, after my parents had died in 1981, I'd gotten wine by bringing it from the main house, but my parents were alive in this world, so I couldn't do that. I stared at the bottles longingly, and I tried to open the door, receiving the clack of a lock in response. I took a key from my pocket, unlocked the door, went in, and saw a note addressed to me right upon entering. It was from my mother. The note said an accident had suddenly occurred at the Kimiyoshi house, and they'd gone out to help with the memorial service. They'd be late coming back, and so on and so forth. Written as a postscript was a notice that the brewer would be drinking alcohol, and to take them inside the front door once I got back for them. I see. They must have been referring to all of this. If the person had come while I was here, I could have told them to put it inside, but I couldn't bear to see them outside like this, but here before I got back. And it would be a pain if my mother started rambling about me being inconsiderate later. I made a sour face, not caring who saw, and pulled the case of beer through the front door. Next, I stood before the wine bottles and solidified my thoughts. Couldn't there have been a slip-up with the order? It was a brewery in a small village. If my father called to say he had ordered one more bottle, they'd probably bring over another one without a second thought. So, what would it matter if one of these disappeared? I always diluted before drinking, so I'd be able to enjoy one bottle of wine for a pretty long time. Despite being in the entrance, I belatedly looked around, grabbed a bottle, ran into my room, and then pushed it into the winter futon in my closet that I wouldn't use for a while. Dog. Sir. It is almost midnight. What are you barking at? Goodness. Actually, my parents live here too, so I won't have many chances to drink. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed a glass, ice, and corkscrew, and a carton of orange juice, and ran back into my room. I put the corkscrew on the wine bottle, and was overwhelmed by the urge to wet my tongue with the nostalgic flavor as soon as I could. How was I supposed to survive in this world without enjoying a good wine? I poured some into the glass, and just listening to the orange juice splashing in to fill it up made my mouth water like a dog. If I dilute it this much, it'll look just like orange juice from the outside. But it was the nostalgic flavor that belonged to my world. At one time, this had been the flavor of my tears of defeat, except for the unbreakable June of 1983. But now, even those tears of defeat felt sweet and tender. Those dead-end worlds were very painful. But I was still surrounded by my kind friends. I had the leeway to choose to surrender to Takano and continue lazily living in that infinite loop. But even that warmth was absent in this world. This made it a week now since I came here. With no prospects of returning to my previous world, I'd resolved myself to staying here for a long time, but a week in, it already would driven me to drink. It'll be fine. Those worlds have driven me to the same state. And I still managed, lazily doing my best as I soaked in wine, right? I need to be released from this Rika Furude quickly. Nobody in this world will understand that, even if I explained it. That meant I had no allies here. If I told someone, they think I'd gone crazy. But considering this world's Rika Furude, that was only natural. This world's Rika Furude was a dour girl without a single friend. And one day she'd been hit by a ball in the schoolyard, and started saying she didn't belong in this world. If that Dr. Yamamoto heard about this, he'd probably make a huge fuss about the impact having caused brain damage. But that wouldn't make the most sense to the people who live here. At the very least, until I arrived, Rika Furude was Rika Furude, that the correct being for this world. Maybe it was more appropriate to say that one day I, someone different from this world's Rika, appeared, then took over Rika's body. Right. Am I not Rika Furude? Well, no. This world's Rika Furude was this world's Rika Furude, a different being than me. I'd simply been interpreting her as being the same as me, even when I'm in different worlds, until now. When I thought about that, leaving aside whether I'd been living happily, I felt like I'd done something bad to this world's Rika Furude. Of course, it wasn't too late to apologize now, and I couldn't give this body back to her anymore. If there was a way to apologize, it would be to acknowledge this world's Rika Furude as a being of her own. Because if I called myself Rika Furude, the girl who already existed would vanish from this life. Which meant the only way to apologize was to not call myself Rika Furude. Well, that had been bothering me for a long time. I've long felt that my young self, pampered as the reincarnation of Yashiro-sama and my old self, who had awakened and traveled countless worlds, had different personalities. But if I thought of them not as personalities, but as different beings entirely, right now I was no longer Rika Furude. Who am I? I stared vacantly at the wine bottle. Did I like this brand? My father always loved to drink this wine. As a result, I borrowed it in countless worlds, and I love to drink it even now. Right now, I can't even be lazy without borrowing the power of alcohol. This wine comforted me, just a little. At this point, I couldn't go on living without this wine. So in other words, I wasn't alive, but the wine was. Which meant I wasn't Rika Furude, and that I was the wine. I stared at the western letters of the brand name written on the wine label, which I didn't know how to pronounce. I thought to myself that it was the name of me. My name is Rika Furude. Rather convoluted way to say you are what you eat. I guess more you are what you drink in this case. No, not that. But this Bernkastel. I don't know what that means. Maybe I'll ask my father. Frederica Bernkastel. Whatever. What a silly name that is. My thoughts began to slur and muddle. Cheers to this shithole of a world. Is it finally over? Nope. This is so long. I'm going to die. I swear I'm just gonna die. Anyways. Thank you for making my food all the time. Nipaaah? But what's this all of a sudden? Mother's Day was a long time ago. As I thanked my mother and patted her shoulders, I brushed her head. It was all a show, of course. But she had the same power inside her as Hanyuu, that by touching her like this, I'd be able to sense it, even if it was feeble. If I did feel that power from my mother, could I kill her on the spot? I wouldn't hesitate to kill, but I couldn't say I wouldn't hesitate right here and now. Because I'd rather she not have that power inside her. And at the same time, I was uneasy about what to do next if she didn't. My mother laughed like it tickled, but contrary to what she thought, I was carefully checking if I needed to kill her. Thank you, you've made your point, so please get off. It tickles. My mother told me that was enough, smiling in a way that was not as dissatisfied as her words implied. Even after being scrupulous, that's a word, about touching her, I couldn't feel any trace of the power. My mother wasn't the one who held the fragment, and I'd already felt my father's head. It wasn't him either. If it wasn't either of the two people closest to the legend of Yashiro-sama, then it was improbable that the fragment was in a person. It was a happy thing not having to kill anyone, but that meant one of my clues was now meaningless. Blah blah blah. That said, even though the possibility was unlikely, I'd still have to touch the heads of the other people in the village every chance I got, just to make sure. And at the time, I had to continue my deciphering of the pile of documents in the ritual implemented storehouse. Whichever I was supposed to choose, the labor of rooting through that entire mountain of the sin of killing someone, I was going to need much more than a little time. I had lost track of how many mornings it had been since I drifted to this world, and this morning was frustratingly the same as the last world, the one I knew. They said that next Sunday was the Watanagashi festival. This is the first time I didn't care whatsoever about it. For Hinamizawa, facing total eviction by next year, this would be their very last festival. They were apparently planning to put on a magnificent show to end things with. My normal world responsibility of performing the dedication dance as the last survivor of the Furude family didn't exist in this world either. So, I was expected to simply go off and have fun. They would have me help with things that kids could help with, like giving out boiled rice and answering the phone. I gotten used to going to school alone too. When I went to school with Satoko, it was always a lively morning with us running and falling everywhere. But that too was beginning to feel like a memory of the distant past. Distant past, words. With several days already behind me and my mind settled, I'd stopped crying about small memories like that. Everything I did was for the sake of returning to my original world. I might cause the trouble he was taking, but I would never cry again. So even when I met Satoko at the school gate and said good morning, only to be bluntly ignored like always, it didn't make me sad. The real Satoko was an incomparable friend of mine. Even if a fake Satoko ignored me, it wouldn't hurt me inside anymore. Miana wasn't outright cold like Satoko was, but she didn't seem to think of me as any more than one of her many classmates. When it seemed like she was actually trying to talk to me. But that was because I was isolated. She was acting out of a kind of pity, and it seemed sadder to accept that. So I had started reacting nastily to Reina's unwanted attention. After just a few exchanges like that, she realized I didn't want her doing this and stopped bothering me. Being all alone wasn't sad anymore. It was only natural I'd be alone as an outsider to this false world. In fact, the less annoying acquaintances I needed, the easier it was for me. That's right, easier. When I started feeling that way, then even if nobody talked to me during lunch, nobody invited me to eat with them, and nobody asked me to play after school, I was totally okay with it. With so few students in the classroom, if I took out a book not related to the class, Shay would confiscate it right away. I probably wouldn't be able to read the old documents while she was teaching. So all I could do was wrap them in covers I made from flipping over the leaflets and folding them, and spending my free time at school pretending I was reading a regular book. We weren't allowed to bring comics to school, but the unspoken agreement was that you could read novels as long as you didn't do it during class. If I could just ignore the hustle and bustle, lunch break would be the time I could focus the most. Somewhere in those countless worlds, there was a time where I got bored with my daily life and read a lot of old documents. Thanks to that, I knew the gist of their contents. I just hoped there was a clue somewhere in them about the fragment rejecting Hanyuu from this world. It had been raining since midday. All of my classmates had stayed in the classroom for break, venting their pent-up energy indoors. Thanks to that, it was a bothersome, loud, and uncomfortable day for me. What's with that gloomy look? What are you reading? At the same time as those words, my old document was taken from me, and there was Satoko's face, smiling evilly. What the heck? I can't read this. Satoko looked at the old document she'd stolen from me with disgust. Well, someone as ignorant as Satoko had no way to understand it. I learned how to read classical Japanese from my father, and even I had to go over each line several times to figure it out. Of course, for Satoko, it wasn't about what it said. She seemed more amused at how unsanitary it looked with dirty letters written on the dirty paper. But even if it was nothing more than a filthy book to her, to me it was something that I could hold a clue. Wow. That could hold a clue. Words. When I tried to snatch it back, she threw it to another friend, as though she'd seen the attempt coming miles away. What is this? Eek, it's gross. The girl who caught it threw to another kid, and that kid, after his face crunched up at the fifth being given to him, grinned like an idiot and threw it to someone else. Over here, pass it. Over here, Mion, pass. Several of my classmates threw in amongst themselves whenever I chased after it, teasing me. At some point, Mion had joined the circle, and it turned into classroom-wide bullying. Today wasn't the first time this had happened. Actually, maybe before I came here, it was always like this. Even in a classroom with just 10 people, an order existed, and so did cliques. Belonging to none, and not wanting to, I was the weakling in the room, and thus clearly the one it was okay to torment. Reina was the only one who said they should stop, but nobody listened to her. My classmates wanted to fool around, and they possibly wanted to tell her I was the only toy in the room, so why shouldn't they play with her during lunch break? But in the last few days, it had left heartwarming territory and moved into aggravating territory. The Satoko clearly treated me with spite. When I thought about it now, the accident with the ball in the schoolyard that brought me into this world, she'd obviously been aiming for Rika, and had just been standing there in the yard. Was Satoko always this oblivious to the pain of others? She'd understood people's pain best, because even though she'd said mean things, she'd been through the worst of anyone. I see. In this world, Satoko's parents were alive, and the villagers didn't torment her. In other words, she hadn't been through the worst of anyone. Personality isn't wholly determined from birth. It's always something cultivated over many events and experiences. With all her lucky dice rolls, this is how Satoko's personality here turned out in this world. In other words, the Satoko is only the same on the outside, but a completely different person from my best friend on the inside. Once I understood that, the sadness of Satoko tormenting me disappeared. And in its place, she began to look like a horrible brat just getting in the way of my haste to return to my original world. Don't bother me. I don't care what any of you do in this lunatic world, but I am desperately working to return my original one, so stay out of my way. Come on, Furude-san. Over here, over here. The old document made its way back to Satoko again. This time, Satoko started teasing me, waving it around and saying to come get it. She held her nose and made a sour face like she was holding up something filthy, earning laughs and jeers from the rest of the class. I went straight for Satoko, and, of course, she threw it to the next one in line. She must have thought it would make me go over there next. But I didn't care about where the document was. Instead, I charged straight at Satoko. I tucked my nails into the bases of my fingers and clenched my fist. I decided this was the fastest method to explain how important this was, make her understand, and prevent any reprisals, all in a very short period of time. I swung my right fist at Satoko's face. The tip of my fist plowed into her face below her left eye, leaving an imprint that wouldn't soon disappear. I promptly grabbed a clump of her hair and pushed her to the floor, then took a nearby chair and raised it over my head before smashing it into her a few times. Satoko didn't know what had just happened. Confused by the sudden violence, she just curled up like a turtle. It looked a little crazy, hitting her with a chair like this, but I wouldn't hurt her very badly. I raised the chair, then slammed it down over the top of Satoko's upper body, exactly as if to hold her to the ground. I lifted my foot above the chair and stomped on it like I was hammering in a nail. Satoko, you're being a little annoying. I was tolerating you since you look like a friend of mine, but that shrill voice of yours is really starting to get on my nerves. If you come within 1 meter of me, I'll punch you right away. No excuses. Hope that's alright. Are you listening? I stomped on the chair again, and finally saw an expression of fear arrive on Satoko's face. Nigiri. Bitch, why are you like this? I knew this was the best answer. When given the chance, I had to give it to her straight. But it made me mad. I was the last one in the world who wanted to see Satoko looking like that. I was the one who was forcing her to make that expression. It made me sick. But it was fine in the end. The Satoko wasn't the one I knew, after all. And one day I'd leave this world for sure. Even if I killed her on the spot, it wouldn't have anything to do with the Satoko in my world. Of my world, rather. That's why it didn't hurt inside at all seeing her look at me so terrified. Come on, give Rika-chan her book back. Here, Rika-chan. Rena plucked the document from a bewildered classmate and returned it to me. So, forgive Satoko-chan, okay? You went a little too far. The stealing my important book and cutting into my precious reading time wasn't going too far? That isn't what I meant. You don't have anything to do with this, so step aside. I just wanted to get this back. I kicked the chair over, indicating to Satoko that she'd been released. But even that action made her so scared that she was frozen in place. I didn't waste time going back to my own seat. Then Satoko began to bawl shamelessly, and Satoshi ran over, making a bit of overprotective fuss about the nurse's office and whatnot. The noise quickly reached the faculty room, and Shie and the principal soon burst in. Are you alright, Satoko-san? This might leave a bruise. Satoshi-kun, please take her to the nurse's office and have her rest. I'll call Yamamoto-sensei. While Shie was talking, the principal must have asked Mion what had happened in the classroom. Mion spoke to him in hushed tones, glancing my way. She was probably saying she had no part in this. Nasty Mion might say that. She didn't betray my expectation. The principal came over to me and told me to come with him to the principal's office. This usually happens when a bullied child happens to bully back. Kingdom Hearts Aqua? No, it's just the teacher. Come on, you guys. A side effect of the bullying, perhaps. I was seriously fed up with everything, but my goal had only been to scare Satoko off from bothering me ever again. Now that I'd done that, I decided I needed to calm the situation down. After being brought to the principal's office, he kept asking me why I punched Satoko, and lectured me that violence was never the answer. But regarding her taking my book and tormenting me, he admitted she was at fault, and I felt a little relieved. This is a fairly difficult book. Is it from your house, Furude-kun? Yes, something like that. I don't dislike classical Japanese, but this one seems fairly difficult. Can you read this? If I couldn't, I wouldn't have been reading it. Only when it's deserved. Gah! You do have a point. Would you mind telling me a little about what's written in here? His behavior wasn't one out of interest in the book, so much as an act dripping with pity, like he wanted to ease the mind of someone alienated and bullied in class a little. Accepting that would do nothing but further amplify my current unhappiness. I don't want any friends anyway, and I don't want you to be my friend either, Sensei. Might I leave now? I want to continue reading as soon as possible. Furude-kun. It's good to read books, but don't you think you should play with your friends once in a while? What friends, bitch? My friends are somewhere else, far away. They're not here, so I don't care. Does not hand hurt at all? Huh? Oh. I didn't realize it until the principal pointed it out. I must have scraped the skin on my hands when I punched Satoko as hard as I could. A little bit of blood was seeping from my right fist. Yamamoto-sensei's in the nurse's office, so go see him and get that bandaged up. I will. Furude-kun, school isn't only for studying. It's also for making friends. I'd like you to take that too. Excuse me. I gave him a quick curtsy. This world's principal wasn't the principal who was allowed to lecture me, so I didn't have any desire to listen. On my way to the nurse's office, I passed the classroom. I met eyes with several students inside, but they immediately looked away. Maybe this will work out. I'm more comfortable with them being scared than teasing me. When I went into the nurse's office, the doctor was just putting a big piece of absorbent cotton under Satoko's eye. Chie, who was with her, looked at me, then walked over with a scary look on her face. Okay, you two. Satoko-san, apologize for taking her book. And Furude-san, apologize for punching her. Satoko, who had been scared and weak in the face all of the sudden violence earlier, must have calmed down, since she now looked dejected. She looked like it didn't make sense to her, only how she was blah 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 blah. She was only teasing me a little, and then I suddenly went crazy for no reason and hit her. If she was like that, there was no way she would apologize first. Of course, I had no duty to apologize either, so I wouldn't apologize first. Come on, both of you. You're going to stay here until you apologize to one another. Shea yelled at us. Clearly making a sour face, I held my bleeding fist out to Yamamoto. Oh, you're bleeding. Take a seat. I'll disinfect it. Both of you! Are you not listening to your teacher? Apologize! I sensed that if we kept making Chie mad, she might tell us to stay after school. What did she think this was? Like how I'd let some school I don't care about do their little lecturing nonsense at me. Every second of every minute is precious. I can't waste a single one. I can hear the anime lightning shooting from their foreheads. Ah. It took me a moment to get what you mean, because it's been a hot minute since I've seen that little trope. I don't think that's the right word. Once I understood that, I was the first to act. As Yamamoto disinfected the wound, I smoothly gave her my apology. Ojo-san, I'm sorry for punching you and stuff. Even I was appalled at how insincere my apology was. Chie probably felt the same way, but she was at least appreciated the words. See, Furude-san apologized. Satoko-san, you apologized too. I'm very sorry for taking your book and playing a joke on you. Satoko's own apology was no less disingenuous than mine. I glared straight into Satoko's eyes, warning her to never bother me again. But Satoko was in her rebellious phase. It would take a lot more than that to make her wince. She returned my glare in kind, as if to say she'd get me back next time. She sighs, unable to do much about her insincere apologies. And then the bell signaling the end of the lunch break rang. Satoko-san, let's go back to the classroom. Furude-san, you come back as soon as you're patched up. Chie followed Satoko and left the nurse's office. I didn't give them so much as a glance and just held my right hand out to out to Yamamoto. The stinging pain of the disinfectant was somehow weak. The hand receiving treatment didn't even feel like my hand. I suppose it wouldn't. It's Rika Furude's hand. Not mine. Everyone must feel lonely that the school is ending next year. Aren't you? No, not really. After living here your whole lives, your homeland will sink into a lake. That has to be sad. I understand how you all feel. That must have been Yamamoto's interpretation of the strained atmosphere in the classroom. If he was convinced of that, then maybe it was fine. It didn't matter to me. Even you had a lot of friends until not too long ago, but everyone you got along with happened to transfer schools at the same time. I'm no stranger to how sad it feels to be suddenly left all alone. Friends I got along with? Tomita-kun and Omakura-kun and the rest, of course. You always spent time with the boys since you got along with them, didn't you? I think they were pretty partial to you as the only girl in the group, though. I see. Even Rika Furude had friends for a while in this world. And thanks to a stroke of bad luck, they all transferred out together and left her behind. They're not your only friends out there, right? I understand how lonely you feel, and you may only know them until next year, but I think it would be good for you to make friends with the other kids in the class and enjoy your time with them. I don't want to get close to them. My real friends, as you said, they went far away. Very, very far away. All I want is to go there. When did you start talking so much like a grown-up, Rika-chan? I guess I just feel like it. Ever since you got knocked out by the ball the other day, I feel like your expressions have grown darker. I'm worried about you. I didn't know how close this Yamamoto man was close to Rika Furude, nor how much of her he knew. But judging from his words, he seemed to be the kind of adult who understood children's feelings, just like Yurie in the previous world. When that ball hit her, I think Rika Furude died. If that was all it took to die, nobody could play dodgeball. If you died back then, wouldn't that make you a corpse? Yamamoto laughed a little, but not completely to tease me. It was just to urge me further along. So Yamamoto wasn't just a doctor at the nurse's office, but a mental counselor for students at a susceptible age. It looked like he wasn't Irie's replacement for nothing. For some reason, I felt like opening up a little to him. Maybe it was because he didn't exist in the world I knew. Right now, everyone who was in this world I knew, no matter who it was, made me uncomfortable. That was why I felt like opening up specifically to someone who wasn't in that world. After all, Yamamoto probably thought I was just a girl hitting puberty. Whatever nonsense I spouted, he would nod and agree. I am not the Rika Furude you and the others know. The chair stuff was deft too far, but the punch was called for. Yeah. What does that mean? Who are you then? For now, I've decided to take the name Brancasto. If I call myself Rika Furude, it would be rude to the person who originally had this body. A German name? It's almost like you're a space alien. Where did you come from? From a different world. If I had to compare it, it's like a world of what-ifs. Probably wouldn't have beaten her with a chair, but the punch was called for. Yeah. Glad we all agree on that. It's still Hinamizawa, but its history and composition are completely different. In this world, they moved forward with the dam project, and the villagers decided to leave, but in my world it's different. The villagers stood up together to defeat the project, and then the government froze it indefinitely. That's the kind of world I came from. Then the Hinamizawa you came from won't end up underwater. That's right. Even after 1983, we'd keep living there peacefully. Sounds like a nice Hinamizawa. I've taken a liking to the area as well, so the eviction is really painful for me. I suppose I'm jealous of the Hinamizawa in the world you say you came from. Can you tell me more about the one in that world? The first step in counseling was to agree to whatever absurd story the patient came out with. If I didn't know that piece of trivia, I might have teared up at Yamamoto telling me to continue. But I couldn't resist the temptation to keep going. He encouraged me, and I kept talking. In that world, there was a big protest movement we called the Dam Conflict, and it took years for them to withdraw their proposal. And through that conflict, the villagers came together. Everyone got along. All the students were friends. I even had transfer students come in from outside of the village. And we made a club where we'd play games, with me on as the president. And while Satoko was very unfortunate, she was good friends with me. And then... Poor Satoko-chan. Why did the village have to bully her like that? If everyone was happy, then they shouldn't have been mean to her. They should have just let her into their happy circle. They don't say things to be mean. That's just how my world is. And she might have had a more painful fate than this world, Satoko. But that one was my best friend, one I couldn't replace or compare with anyone. So seeing the way Satoko is in this world makes me madder than it should. You can't tolerate her being mean to you when she looks the same as your real friend? Yes. Yamamoto heaved a heavy sigh, then stared out the window with his arms folded. It looked like the rain outside had let up somewhat, but it was still drizzling. After keeping his silence for a few moments, Yamamoto spoke up. What you're saying is, this isn't your world? That's right. I need to get back to my original world, because this one isn't mine. I can see why you'd want to return to such a fun-sounding Hinamizawa as soon as you could. But is there even a way to do that? There is, but it's very hard to find. I see. Then what do you have to do? A fragment is lost somewhere in Hinamizawa, I think. Because of that fragment, Hanyuu, or I should say, Oyashiro-sama, couldn't come to this world and bring me back. Oyashiro-sama? You mean the deity worshipped at the Furude shrine? It would take too long to explain, but basically, yes. I traveled through countless worlds with her. This world just happens to be one of the ones I drifted to. So as soon as she can get here, I plan on leaving. That escalated pretty quickly. In other words, normally you and Yashiro-sama would come to this world together. But a Yashiro-sama, the one with the power to bring you out of this world, can't get in for some reason. Which means you've been left behind, like a boat that drifted ashore? Generally speaking, yes. The fragment blocking her is somewhere in Hinamizawa. If I don't find it and burn it, I can't go back to my old world. Where might that fragment be? Somewhere. A fragment is feelings, so it has to be something with those in it. I don't know what kind of object it resides in, and there's no proof it has an object at all. It's in an object at all, rather. It could be inside a person. I just don't know. You said you'd burn it if it was an object, right? What would you do if it was a person? Hanyuu said if it was a person, killing them would amount to the same thing. I'm praying the fragment isn't residing in a person. Who is this Hanyuu? A new character? Oh, it's another name for Yashiro-sama. Hanyuu is actually her real name. I think Yashiro-sama was just a name the villagers gave her later on. I see. Was that written in the book you were reading? No, not exactly. Yamamoto's arms remained folded, and he groaned in thought. Another silence settled, with rain being the only audible sound. Maybe I'd gotten nervous. I knew it wouldn't solve anything to talk about it, but I did anyway. Yamamoto was probably wondering if something was wrong with my brain. I could guess that by looking at his complicated expression. Do you think you'll find the fragment? I don't know. Since it can interfere with Hanyuu, I figured there would be a clue in something related to Yashiro-sama, which is why I was reading those old documents. I was searching for a clue to search for the fragment, basically. I see. I do hope you find it. But if it was a person, what would you do? You wouldn't really kill them, would you? It's hard to answer when you put it like that, but if it was the only way to return to my old world, I might not hesitate. After all, from my world's point of view, this world is just a delusion, a daydream. Whoever dies here, they'll be alive in my world, so it doesn't matter. I see. But hold on a moment. This world might just be a dream to you, but it's the real world for me. It wouldn't be good if someone was killed, no matter who it was. I understand your logic, and I want nothing more than to get out of here without having to kill someone. Let's get back on track. This Hanyuu, who tells you you about how to go back to your old world, how does she tell you that? Is it something like a divine message? Or does she appear in your dreams? No, nothing that vague. I talk to her. There's a crystal ball that acts as a communicator between us. Would I be able to talk to this Hanyuu as well? That would be the fastest way. If you could talk to Hanyuu directly, that would be enough to prove my nonsense true. But I feel uneasy. Even if I could talk to her, Yamamoto might not be able to. Those kind of magic items come up pretty often in stories. But maybe it was worth a shot trying. I took the crystal ball out of my pocket. That marble is the communicator? That's what it looks like, right? I thought the same thing. The crystal's ball light was extremely weak. As it got dimmer, it was also taking longer to restore lately. After talking to her several days ago and the light weakened again, it was having a hard time recovering. This much light wasn't quite enough. It looked like I needed a bit more time to recover. Can you see light in this marble? I wonder. Maybe it's just reflecting light? But it is very pretty. Is it from the ramune bottle? Of course not. It's a Furude Shrine treasure called a Kamu no something. And we should be grateful for it. It's rude of me to say, but I agree that it looks like a ramune bottle marble to me too. From the Furude Shrine. So how do you use this to talk to Hanyuu? I put it to my forehead. When I do, I can hear her voice. Yamamoto immediately tried. He shut his eyes and let out a low groan. It probably wouldn't work. I couldn't tell if it was because it wasn't me or because the power was too weak. I'm sorry, but I can't hear anything. What about you? It needs to recover a certain amount of power to talk to Hanyuu. Let me have it. It doesn't work for me either. You can't hear Hanyuu's voice if the crystal ball doesn't have all its power. I pushed it tightly against my forehead, but all I felt was a cool sensation. I couldn't feel the power in it. I see. That's a shame. In a few days, some of the power should return. If you give me time, I'm sure I'll be able to talk to her again. If you let me try again, then... I see. Then once you can talk to her, would you mind letting me talk as well? Yes, of course. At this rate, you'll think I'm crazy in the head and it'll all be over. It'd leave a bad taste in my mouth if I didn't clear up such a rude misunderstanding. How long does it take for the crystal ball's divine power to recover? Not much longer, I think. It might even be fine after one more night. Once the power comes back, I'll tell you. Thank you, I'll be waiting. If you do let me talk to Hanyuu, how about I help you go back to your old world too? Does that sound good? Really? The simple world made a deep impression on my mind. If someone other than Hanyuu were around to understand me, it would obviously be a reassurance. And with two people, the time it would take to go through the piles of literature would be halved. I'd welcome the help of a cat at this point, so I was really glad. On the other hand, I had to think about what Yamamoto felt. For Yamamoto, right now, I was a dangerous person who said she might even commit murder over a delusion. He was only speaking to me in such an understanding way to try and keep communication going. It didn't mean he actually believed me. But if Hanyuu and Yamamoto could talk, it would clear all those fears away, and then you'd have to believe in the supernatural phenomena of Hanyuu and me. But the real world didn't usually work out that well. After all, even if I made Hanyuu talk to him, it could end the way that it always does, with Yamamoto not hearing anything. I could convey what she was saying, but he wouldn't believe it. But that didn't mean I had the option of not trying. I wouldn't give up before doing it. I'd try everything. Wasn't that the lesson I learned from this 100-year journey? Promise me, if you can talk to Hanyuu, you have to believe me. Even though all she says is ow, ow, and doesn't really act like a god. I promise. If you let me talk to Hanyuu, I'll believe your story. But if I can't talk to her, what will you do? I didn't actually think he'd reply like that, and it confused me. What do you mean, what will I do? I promise to believe your story if you win. Then why not promise to me that if I win, you'll believe my story? That sounds fair, doesn't it? What story do you want me to believe? Well, I can imagine it without having to ask. You'd probably tell me to go to a largest hospital and have my head given a proper look at. And of course, there's absolutely nothing wrong with my head, so I come up with 0 results. When that happened, maybe they say I need to take care of my mind and give me nootropic drugs or something. I heard this from Rena once before. There's a drug that makes you incredibly lethargic, unable to do or even think anything at all. Dangerous patients think terrible things and sometimes actually do them. The drug stopped that from happening. If they made me take that, it would be the same as killing me. It might seem like a fair condition, but it looked to me like the scales weren't in my favor to begin with. I shouldn't have told this stuff to a man I barely knew. After all of that, I began to regret my decision. Could I fool him if I said, it was all a joke? Did you believe me? Nipaaah. If that was going to be my last resort, I could use it use it if my attempt to have Yamamoto and Hanyuu communicate failed. I couldn't abandon the possibility that Yamamoto could be my ally without trying first. Then I'll keep a slot open tomorrow just for you, Rika-chan. Does that sound good? He made his suggestion, taking a notebook out of his coat and going over his other appointments. I nodded and said I agreed. This isn't gonna be the end either, is it? This is gonna keep going and going. I'm just gonna be dead. Correction, I'm already dead. Rika-chan, do you have a moment? After school, I was about to head home before the rain started up again. Satoshi called out to me. Yeah, nah, trust me, you'll know when you're at the end. Okay. I looked up and saw Mion and Reina with him. I'd been stopped by the upperclassmen brigade. Their expressions weren't exactly gentle ones. I suspected I was in for some sort of punishment after what I did during lunch break. Do you need something from me? Yeah. We wanted to talk to you a little. About lunch break? Well, that too. I'm sorry for hitting Softico with a chair and stuff. I spoke the words fine, but didn't bother to hide my glum attitude. Please don't be scared, Rika-chan. We're not here to scold you or anything like that. Then why are you... Well, I'll say it straight. We need to talk about how to get along with everyone from now on. Ah, it's so long. That's what she said. I just want you to understand something. Some of the responsibility for things ending up this way belongs to you, Rika-chan. Mion, you didn't have to say that. I think it's an upperclassman's duty to explain these things, isn't it? This conversation looked like it would be a fun one. If I blew them off, it'd probably just only get worse, so I decided to just pretend I was listening. Reina took my silence for me being dispirited, and she started speaking in a much more light-hearted tone. Mika-chan, don't you think it'd be great if you could make friends with everyone and have lots of fun playing with them? So we were thinking about what we could do so you could get along with everybody. What do you think about that? What do you? I don't know. You may not know this, Rika-chan, but Mion, she collects a lot of games, right? Well, it's an old hobby of mine. When I was little, I collected a ton of board games and card games for some reason. I haven't bothered with them at all recently, but I couldn't just get rid of them, so I have a whole lot of piled up in storage. She has all these fun games, but she won't play with them with anyone, so they're just collecting dust. What a waste, right? I wanted to play that British burglar game where the thief puts on sunglasses. I wanted to try that game where you connect tree branches like building blocks. But all the manuals were in English. That Xion reading those manuals, so it was the only thing she was good at. We could just ask her, but she goes to another school far away. Then we should all try to figure them out together. I'm sure that will be fun. That's true. If we all play by the same rules, then even if we're wrong, it'd still be fair. Well, doesn't that sound fun? We were thinking about starting an after-school game club. A club? For games? Everyone in class can play. And while you're playing with everyone, I'm sure you'll eventually become part of the circle before you know it, Rika-chan. In other words, this is your upperclassman being considered and giving you the chance to fit in. Again, Mion, you don't have to say it like that. I felt a little sorry for you lately, but I actually think some of your current isolation is your own fault, Rika-chan. My own fault? Reina and Satoshi fell silent after hearing that. I guess everyone in class shares Mion's opinion. My own fault? Of course, though this was about me, I had no idea what they meant by that. They were talking about how the Rika Furude before I came to me, she was the same as a stranger. But to them, it must have seemed like my surprised tone was just me not understanding because I was young. They sighed a little. It was an unpleasant sigh, like they were telling me to look at myself. I wanted to be freed from this as soon as possible. Before everyone moved away, Nika-chan, you were kind of like a princess, weren't you? I was a princess? Yep, a princess. Nika-chan, you were like a princess to that group of boys. You had them wrapped around your little finger. You didn't even need to do anything, you just let them act for you. Diranori Tomita-kun and Okamura-kun? They seem to like you a lot, so they do whatever you told them to. You just sat on your reputation, unconcerned. And you do things like make the boys who like to compete, so you could always get the best deal, like a war profiter. A lot of kids didn't know that was very fair. Didn't think that was very fair. So when those boys all moved out at the same time, by coincidence, and only you were left behind, some of those kids thought you got what you deserved. None of that was about me. Minika-chan, we were talking about you. Please listen to what Mi-chan is saying. I am. No, you're not. Mika-chan, you think it doesn't have anything to do with you. Am I right? Whether Rena or Reina was still just as sharp about the weirdest things. I had to believe it was just a wild guess, but she had hit the nail right on the head. Reina, you stop too. I think Rika-chan has thought about it enough already. I wonder. She still hasn't said so. It seems to me like she hasn't read it and realized it until we told her. Come on, stop it. We're not here to bully Rika-chan. We only want her to be friends with everyone, right? That means we all have to work hard to change our relationships with each other. For some reason, I was upset. Because it was as though they weren't talking about Rika Furude, but about me. Me, a princess. There was no guarantee I wasn't one until now. Loved the most of all club members, Rena and the boys in the class pampering me, laughing at Satoko and Keiichi's failures, as I coolly profited from their conflict. Without giving anything myself, I just greedily devoured the goodwill people poured onto me. They're right, that was me. I hadn't wanted to accept this sad, lonely world. I set myself apart. But of course, they couldn't have actually been talking about me. So, though I didn't know the reason, I was still upset. We were thinking of how Sadako joined the club too. She's really stubborn, so she won't say it, but she wants to get along with you, Rika-chan. How does that sound? Do you want to try being in our game club, Rika-chan? I'm sure it'll be a lot of fun. Or think of it this way. Do you want to start putting in a little bit of effort to change yourself? Some things might be awkward at first, but I'm sure you'll get along with everyone sooner or later. After all, everyone wants to be your friend. And if you want to be their friend too, then you're both reaching out your hands. I'm sure you'll meet in the middle. And look, we're already reaching out to you. And all you have to do is grab hold, Rika-chan. I feel like Keiichi said something a lot like that in some other world. Those words probably made Rika Furude really happy. But that wasn't me. All this applied to the Rika Furude from before I possessed this body. For me, this world was fake, a dream world, and besides, I was in the middle of a hunt. I didn't have the time to hang out with them. But they weren't faking their feelings for Rika Furude, and I found myself without an answer, at a loss for how to respond to them. We're sorry, Rika-chan. To tell the truth, when you went to wash our hands, and you were talking with Yamamoto-sensei in the nurse's office, we might have overheard you a teeny bit. Reina gave me an unapologetic look. An apologetic look, not unapologetic. I never thought others would be listening to that conversation, which must have sounded like garbled nonsense to anyone from this world. I don't understand if it weirded them out and they didn't want to come near me, but I couldn't quite understand why it had resulted in this. The world you were talking about, Rika-chan, it sounds like a really fun world where everyone gets along together. You said you wanted to go back there, right, Rika-chan? So we talked and thought about how we could bring you back there. Still, it's not like we can call back Tomita-kun and Okamura-kun about now that they moved. Blah. Yep. I think everyone wants to go back to that old world, but I think that's definitely impossible. Huh? That startled me. There was no way Reina knew about me and my old world. Even still, her words felt full of meaning, and they echoed in my heart. You can gather all the fragments of the cup together, but they're just fragments. Once it breaks, you can't go back to the way it was. But it's more than one cup. It's a shame that the cup broke, but you can always look for another one. But if you look down on the broken cup forever, you'll never ever find it. Here's what we mean, Rika-chan. You can't get your good friends who moved away to come back here. So you just have to make new friends who are just as good as they were. I think a world like that could be really close to the one you came from, Rika-chan. It wouldn't be exactly the same, of course. But I think it's as close as you're going to get. And by doing that, you can make even stronger relationships than you had before. You know what they say, when it rains the ground gets harder, or something like that anyway. God Reina has a good friend? Yes. How? What do you think, Rika-chan? We'll help out, so you can make new friends quickly. Would you like to give it a try? Those gentle words would have been tear-worthy if they had been said to this world's Rika Furude. But now that I had possessed her, she was gone. The Rika Furude they were talking to was no longer of this world. I thought to myself that I should just give this body back to her. If I did, then me living in this remote parallel universe would have the chance to change her fate and make this world a happy one, if only little by little. If I went back to my old world and gave this leftover body back to Rika Furude. But I couldn't do that. Because for me to leave this world would require the same method as returning the fragment from the world to the world of the gods. In other words, my death. Only my death could make me go away. Which meant at the point I took over for Rika Furude, she was the same as dead. But maybe, just maybe, there was one way to return this body to Rika Furude. That would be for me to die a different way. I wasn't a parasite or anything. In difficult to understand terms, I was an individual personality aware of other universes. Or maybe I should call myself a memory aware of other universes. And that meant that if I could forget about the other worlds, that would represent the same thing as me dying. This world was the only world for Rika Furude, and she would live the best she could in it. If so, I would gradually forget everything, losing my grasp on which world I had lived in, and try my hardest to live in the world I was in now. Which meant that giving up on my previous world and living in this world was possible simply if I did not finish reading that. It might be a different world than my old one, but it was the closest I could ever get. There we go. Wait, that was the same thing. Which meant that giving up on my previous world and living in that one was possible simply if I decided to do it, like Reina said. Got it. Eh. I'm too used to like logs actually being with the previous message than what's on screen, so it might be a little different from my old world. But this club would still form. In exchange for Keiichi and half her classmates, Satoshi was here. I wasn't best friends with Satoko, but depending on how we interacted in the future, we could at least become regular friends. He and Mizawa would sink underwater in another 6 months, but I could work hard to make new friends in my new home. That cruel destiny wasn't Rika Furude's alone. It was an impartial destiny, shared equally by all who lived in this world. Only I had the luxury of being a special case and jumping between destinies at a whim. I didn't know which world I should devote myself to. Rina's word came back to me. A broken cup never went back to normal, and I couldn't find another one as long as I was lamenting the first. What did the cup represent? Cups were fulfilling with water. The water could probably called happiness. The cup broke, and the happiness inside it was scattered everywhere. The cup was broken, and I was at a loss, unable to fill it with happiness again. But if I could change the way I thought, rather than be attached to the broken cup forever, fill a new cup with new happiness, it could open up the world, open the door to a new world, not open the world to a new door. Goodness. Still, while that world might be similar, it wouldn't be the same. My heart had weakened, and I'd been discouraged. Wasn't this only so tempted because my search for the key to go back was so difficult? Before, didn't I swear to put in any effort I needed to return to my old world? If I broke that oath, Hanyuu, gambling on my fate, would be left behind for all eternity, all alone, and I'd be the only one so selfishly happy. While I didn't have any responsibility to make Hanyuu happy, she was my ally and partner who stuck with me for 100 years. And my friend. So, even if I wanted to give in to temptation, I'd have to ask Hanyuu. Which meant right now, I had no right to answer the proposal. Really, thank you. I'm very happy. It's alright. We'll protect you. So let's make lots of good memories before we have to leave. No, well... Could you give me time to prepare my feelings? What? What's with that girl's response of all of a sudden? It's not like Satoshi can just ask you on a date or anything. Or did he? Mi-chan, that wasn't necessary. I can understand how she feels, just a little. So I'll wait for you to prepare your feelings, Rika-chan. Thank you. If I do accept, then please, let this Rika Furude be one of your friends. I bowed apologetically. Here and now, that was the most I could do. After refusing their suggestion that we all go home together, I left on my own. It was Rika Furude's right, not mine, to enjoy going home with them. It was something I, Frederica Berncastel, could accept. What was I, anyway? I wondered if another ball could fly into my head like before. That was how this world's Rika Furude was possessed by me. So if I got hit again, would I vanish and the pure Rika Furude who lives in this world return? If only I wasn't me, I wouldn't hesitate to take them up on their offer. This world truly was far sadder than the one I came from. But this world had something all on its own, and the opportunity to become a happy world in its own right. If I hadn't known about the other worlds, I wouldn't have been able to contain tears of joy at that mere premonition of happiness that I might once again attain. Were these conflicting emotions those of this world's Rika Furude sleeping inside of me? Those emotions made me angry, and I blamed myself, asking why I'd put their offer on hold and went home all alone. I'm back. Welcome home. My mother always immediately followed that up with do you have homework, but not today. Rika? Come into the kitchen. Her voice was vaguely cheerful and light. I wondered what it was. Did she want to surprise me in a good way? But I couldn't remember today being special. Okay, the music paused, but like every single fucking time that melody comes, it's just like, ugh. Anyways, a person's expectations sometimes come out in their voice. For the time being, it felt okay to go poke my head in. I set my that blah, 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 blah. I set down my things and headed for the kitchen. When I entered, my mother had already started on dinner despite it being so early. She was in a good mood. I wonder if something nice happened. Every year at this time, with the Watanagashi festival approaching, she really got more and more impatient with their preparations and setup. Knowing all that, my mother's good mood baffled and confused me. I asked if she needed something. When I did, she suggested something I'd never heard even once in these 100 years. Come over here and help me make dinner. We're having curry today. Let's make something wonderful and surprise your father with it. Uh-huh. I didn't like curry that much, but before these 100 years, meaning not me, but Rika Furude, I think she might have liked it. We love Reina appreciation hours. Goodness. I knew, at least, that my mother was trying to make her daughter happy and suggesting she and Rika Furude, not I, make dinner together. I didn't like my mother that much. She was prone to hysterics, and I hated how she was always sounded like she was hunting you down when she talked. When she treated me so nicely, my reason for disliking her felt irrational. Wondering why my mother had had a change of heart, I decided to go along with it as to not hurt her feelings. Then you can peel the potatoes. Can you do it with a knife? Actually, that's dangerous, so use the peeler instead. Okay. It was actually rather good with a knife. I was so good when I peeled daikon radishes, I could make a long strip of skin at the same time I sliced them. But there was no reason to damage my mother's pride by showing her daughter could use knives better than her. I decided to make her look good for now. My mother had probably been using knives for a decade now, and I've been using them for many decades. Like, at least a decade of decades. There was an order of magnitudes differences between us. So I wanted to be proud of using a knife better than my mother. I wanted to brag about it. But that might have trampled over her feelings. Her want to tap knife use, yes. Parents are supposed to live longer than their children. So children respect the things their parents have learned from having lived longer than them. But, which is like me, live longer than parents and learn many more things. Still, I think I probably never learned what I really needed to. I mean, as long as I generally listened to my mother, she'd never get hysterical. If I didn't feel like respecting her as my senior in life, she wouldn't feel like she needed to act as one either. In the end, all that was left was a cold and comfortable relationship between parent and child. If I had acted more like a daughter and pretended to be an ignorant child when I needed to be, maybe my relationship with her would have been more peaceful, like this. Basically, she was Rika Furude's mother. Not the mother of the witch who had lived for 100 years. Thinking about it made it seem obvious she'd be cold to me. So first we put the ones in the pot that take the longest to cook. Okay. When do we put in the onions? The onions will melt if we cook them too long, so we can leave them for last. I normally put the onions first when making curry. You work so hard on cutting the onions too. I'm sure they'll taste delicious. Okay. My mother smiled. She seemed very happy. Her smile was warm. I thought I'd completely forgotten over these 100 years, but I remembered for less than a moment in time. My parents had to die in 1981. That fate was unchangeable. And besides, we could never get along in the first place, so it didn't matter if they died. As thoughts like these overlapped, maybe my concern with my parents had waned. Our hearts had subtly lost their connection, and the situation had subtly worsened. Before now, I hadn't thought I could gain anything from this world. Not once did I think it would make me realize something like that. With a mother like this, maybe spending time with her would be more. It would be fun. That's right. The reason I rejected my mother's warmth, maybe it was because I wanted to soften the sadness I felt at her death. If I could change the fate she meant in 1981, then she might as well hate me. Was that the idea at the root of it all? In this world, my mother hadn't died in 1981. She would stay here for a long time to come. I felt just a little jealous of Rika Furude, and I was stricken with a desire to return to this world's me to her. This world was so different than my previous one. Keiichi wasn't here, Shion wasn't here, Hanyuu wasn't here, but in exchange, Satoshi and my parents were here. There was no club, but there would be one soon. Satoko wasn't my best friend, but she could be in the future. I could weigh my previous world with this one on the scales, but I wouldn't know which way it would tip. I decided to leave this decision up to Hanyuu. Yes, My destiny wasn't mine alone. It was Hanyuu's destiny, too. Whichever I chose, I would have to talk to Hanyuu before making my final decision. This multiple world concept has something I only had because Hanyuu had lent me her power. If Hanyuu had never given it to me, it would have been over from the very start. Takano would have sliced open my belly, and that would have been it. We put the lid on the curry, so now it had to simmer. My father returned in the meantime, and really enjoyed seeing us make curry together. Then at my mother's suggestion, he set the table. In any normal 1881, he really hated it when my mother told him to do anything. But he wasn't troubled at all by this prospect in this world. Rika, put the rice on everyone's plates, please. Can you do that? Yep, I can. And of course I can do that, idiot. It's something I've thought many times before, but this time I didn't. I opened the warm, steaming rice cooker and plated the rice. My mother brought the piping hot curry pot over and spilt it over amongst everyone's plates. Wow, that's good. Rika served the rice and Mom made the curry. It looks delicious. No, that isn't right. You made the curry with me while your father did nothing. Meep. I peeled myself back. Furude Rika shouted that I wasn't needed, so I pulled back. I withdrew inside Rika Furude, as she got to enjoy a family dinner from the bottom of her heart. When we saw the crooked... Crooked? Ah, okay. Crooked makes more sense than crooked. Crooked potatoes, we all laughed pleasantly. I would never cut potatoes to be so ugly. But Rika Furude was still bad at this, so these things happened. When I used the same ingredients, the only thing curry tasted like was the curry powder from the store. After 100 years with the same curry powder, it tasted the same, no matter how you made it. But this particular curry tasted different. I cried at what Rika Furude had lost. No, at what I had lost. Rika Furude got to experience that warmth she had once forgotten. I wonder if another ball would come flying and hit me in the head. Then I would pass out for a while, and upon waking, I would be gone. Wasn't that the best possible happy ending? I was the stranger here. I thought this universe was strange from out of the other parallel universes, but it was me. I was a stranger. Then, what I had... What had that world been, the one I had reached after 100 years? Was it happiness that we'd all won? Keiichi, Rena, Mion, Satoko, Shion, and I? Was it all worth nothing? That wasn't true. It was a radiant world, when we'd all won the right to live in after 100 years of learning to trust each other. It was replete with a different kind of happiness than this one. Both shone brightly, and neither was better or worse than the other. Maybe in the end, most worlds weren't better or worse than any other. I only lived in the extreme worlds, the one where I struggled to see whether Takano killed me or not. So out of all the infinite universes, I started to think one of them was either right or wrong. But the multiverse wasn't simple enough to think in binaries like that. Tomorrow's dinner might be steak or salty sari. It wasn't about which was right and which was wrong. In both of these worlds, I'd spent a happy time eating dinner with family. What if my respective selves had been reserved during tonight's dinner? But that was an incredibly tasteless thing to ask. The real problem wasn't that big to begin with. Neither my last world nor this one was better than the other. I needed to accept that. I still didn't know where the fragment I needed to return my world was. But what if I never knew, and the power of the crystal ball connecting me to Hanyuu disappeared? I would disappear like the stranger I was, and give this body back to Rika Furude. From her point of view, she would have to say that I had entered from my old world. Just as I once called this world a daydream, for Rika Furude, my old world was the real daydream. Her strange delusions of me would simply disappear along with it. Maybe it didn't really matter how to return to my original world. Which world I decide was my blah blah blah. Maybe that was really all this was about. After we finished eating, we cleaned up our places and started washing things. My father said he had a meeting tonight, and he was about to leave again. Rika, could you wash these for me? I have something to talk with Dad about, so please do the rest. Okay, I responded cheerfully as Rika Furude. But I had to realize something slightly out of place. If she had something to talk to my father about, there were plenty of chances during dinner. But she made me wash the dishes so they couldn't talk among themselves. Rika had to stay put and wash the dishes. But I couldn't suppress the curiosity that was welling up, so I snuck over to the front door to listen on what my parents were saying. My mother was the one talking. Her tone of voice wasn't a cheery one. Yamamoto-sensei is discussing it with a big hospital in the city. From what he said, it might be her heart more than her brain. Apparently there's a wonderful doctor there who can help. I knew it. I knew I shouldn't have asked. Yamamoto certainly hadn't promised to keep our discussion in the nurse's office to himself. As soon as I left, he probably called my parents and told them their daughter was ranting about nonsense. He probably explained it as my isolation at school wearing down on my mind and damaging my heart. Top 10 anime betrayals? Yeah. Considering what I told him, even that would be a conscientious interpretation. Did you talk to Rika about it? I will after this. I mean, it feels like we're tricking her. Given that tomorrow the doctor will be here and will suddenly be off to the hospital. But when I think about how she feels, I can understand. Her friends got up and moved away, leaving her all alone. I should have tried to understand her feelings. Rika's always been saying she didn't want to move. We didn't wait for her to deal with that. And blah blah blah. We made her repress it. When is Yamamoto-sensei coming tomorrow? He said the evening, but he didn't give me an exact time. He said he preferred if you were there too. I'll be in the assembly hall tomorrow, so when he gets here, give me a call. Alright. Don't be discouraged. I understand why she's saying she wants to go back to her original world, but there's nothing we can do anymore. This was decided between the village and the national government. I at least want to give her some fun things to look back on when she remembers living in Hinamizawa. You're right. It's time, so I'll get going. I'll leave. Rika to you. Alright. Come back safely. I snuck back into the kitchen the same as I come, but I think the floorboards must have creaked. My mother returned to the kitchen. She still didn't sound particularly cheerful. Were you listening, Rika? Yamamoto-sensei called us today. He told us the way you talked to him about me. Yamamoto's really mean for talking about it without asking me. Rika, I'm sorry. You wanted to live in this village forever, didn't you? We never thought about your feelings, and I think we said a lot of pretty harsh things to you. It's okay. It doesn't really bother me. My mother's apology was meant to be heard by the Rika Furude living in this world. It wasn't for me to accept, so I denied it. My mother kept apologizing anyway. I was going to deny again, but I stopped. Yeah, the fucking piano, the fucking melody. Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't my turn. I should pull back. And then I felt myself begin to fade out. As I did, I felt my eyes grow warm. I can read so fucking good. The rest was, for me, a misty, hazy world. I cried as I buried my face in my mother's chest. Aww. And my mother cried as well as she hugged me. If I could have disappeared like that, this too might have been Rika Furude's life. After that, my mother told a lot of stories of Hinamizawa, as if to reminisce about her childhood. About what she liked as a kid, what she did, and where. About things happening or not happening. As she talked, we comforted each other. Both of us wanted wanting our beloved village to stay in our hearts forever. And when your mom, not mother, all the elderly people in the village treated me like I was really important, that was because they believed I was the reincarnation of a Yashiro-sama. Yashiro-sama's reincarnation? I never told you, have I? There was an old legend in the Furude family. If there are 8 first children in a row who are girls, the 8th girl is said to be the reincarnation of Yashiro-sama. That girl happened to be me. Not me? You're our first child and a girl, but you would be the 9th one. We have a maternal line, I suppose. Your mom is the 8th, Yashiro-sama's reincarnation. But this is a secret, okay? You have to make sure not to tell anyone about it. Is she gonna have to kill her mom? The only ones you know who are who know are your late grandmother, me, and you. It's a secret between the two of us, okay? Sometimes, as proof of trust between girls, they reveal secrets to one another. For my mother, this was probably a trivial secret that she could use for that reason. But for me, it was different. Hanyuu was the first able to was first able to appear before the 8th of 8 consecutive generations of girls, before the Yashiro-sama's reincarnation. But in this world, Rika Furude was in the 8th. She was on the Yashiro-sama's reincarnation. So, in this world, Hanyuu couldn't appear before Rika for today. And that was when, with my face buried in my mother's chest, I felt a warmth. No, literal heat. Does she have a fever? No. This felt the same as Hanyuu's power. Well, this was a secret. With my grandmother dead, there was the only one who knew my mother was the Yashiro-sama's reincarnation, the woman herself. Which meant, if my mother was gone, the fragment of the already being a reincarnation of Yashiro-sama in this world would disappear. When will this pain end? Never. Like we're not going to be here for a while? Soon. Soon! TM. My warm tears ceased to flow, and I felt my eyes drying up as I plummeted to the bottom of the abyss of despair. It was her. My mom had the fragment in her. If I could have, I would have chosen never to remember what that fact entailed. Mommy murdering? Maybe? Perhaps? Perchance? Death of mother? Again? For the 101st time? When I tried to use the crystal ball with Yamamoto today, it still hadn't recovered enough for him to talk to Hanyuu. Only half a day had passed, but maybe if I went to the storehouse I'd get through. Hanyuu once told me the old air from the past had remained in the storehouse and that she felt comfortable there. Maybe that meant the storehouse was filled with Hanyuu's power. In other words, while the crystal ball didn't have quite enough power, maybe being in the storehouse would help a little. Late that night, I slipped out of the bed and snuck into the storehouse. I wanted nothing more than to talk to Hanyuu. I went to the altar before the holy vessel and spoke into the crystal ball. No, don't mother your murder. I think I've done too much reading, but that's okay. Speaking to the crystal ball. Can you hear me, Hanyuu? The light in the ball was feeble, but its otherworldly glow was clearly present. Please let her hear me. My wish is granted, in a quiet voice, so low it might disappear at any moment, spoken in answer. I can hear you, Rika. Hanyuu, thank goodness, listen. I don't know what to do. I don't know. This wasn't the time for crying. I needed to tell her everything I discovered and ask Hanyuu's opinion. I quashed my frantic emotions and told her the fragment was in my mother. Mommy fragment. Hanyuu stayed quiet for a few moments. She knew, of course, that I'd have to kill my mother to return the fragment to the world of the gods. It makes sense, doesn't it? You can only appear to Yashiro-sama's reincarnation. I'm not the 8th in this world, so you can't appear to me. I think you need to go to bed. No, you. The 9th isn't good enough, huh? It's a very long time ago, ancient times, so ancient I've mostly forgotten. It happened back when Hanyuu was still living in Hinamizawa, before Hanyuu became a Yashiro-sama. It was still how it all began, which Hanyuu never told me about, no matter how much I asked her. My human self, that is, when I decided I would become a god, my daughter, your ancestor Rika, was very sad about that. She knew I made the decision because I lost hope in the human world. I took all the sins of the human world upon me, for there was no way to cleanse those sins other than to destroy the sinners themselves. Jesus! People were forcing their sins onto each other, an ugly existence. Their excessive cruelty caused me to lose hope in this world. I undertook all the sins of the human world and cleansed them by letting them kill me. Jesus. I entrusted the final duty to my own daughter. I thought that unless I gave her that rule, she would one day be despised as the daughter of a demon god and lose all hope in the human world herself. My daughter didn't like that rule, but she understood that the weight of her mission, in the end, she went through with it. But she said something to me. That she would change the human world, in which only the price of life could purify its sins. Humans would combine their strength and help each other, cooperating with mutual benefit in mind. She swore to me that she would create the utopia, which her mother had only dreamed of. Please, mother, do not lose hope in the world of man. I swear that I shall heal this sadness. That sadness. I can words. Oh, good. But I would become a god. I couldn't accept my daughter's feelings. No, actually, that wasn't it. I already lost hope in the corrupted world of man, and I just didn't want to look at it anymore. But my daughter made a firm promise that she would remake that world into something better. Then I shall believe in what you feel. When in this land people live happily, aid one another, support one another, and think as one, I shall return this land once more. My daughter killed me and took control of the village, the divine power of the demon god dwelling within her. She became their leader and created doctrine so that everyone would trust in and help one another. By making them to fear a curse which discordant hearts would revive the specter of the demon god, she led them strictly, not letting my purification go to waste, so that those purified sins would never again revisit the village. And so the village did regain a temporary peace, but I never descended to them again. I had rejected the human world so much too strongly. But no matter how strong the power to reject, it can never last forever. Whether hearts or walls or lids or doors, there is nothing that time will not decay. Even the power shutting me away from the human world wouldn't last forever, rather. My daughter would learn the limits of that power through revelation from a higher god than me. It said that when 8 generations of Furude born a girl as their first child, I would come again. The miracle of 8 consecutive firstborn daughters would be the key that broke my power of rejection. My daughter left that legend to the Furude family, and it passed down to the descendants so that this land would continue becoming my ideal. Hello? Something tells me this isn't supposed to happen, because right-clicking or isn't working either. We didn't come this far. Just for the game to break. We did no saves. So how is when they cry Rei? It broke on me. That's how it is. As you can clearly see here, I didn't save at all. Please save this time, oh my fucking god. I promised nothing. Save? No. I don't learn. Maybe I should have saved when you told me to. Why would it break again at the same point? But like, why would it stop at literally the same exact spot twice? You know? Okay, so on Steam there's at least one person with the same exact issue as you, and they did find a solution. But they're on Linux. What was the solution? But no, it's dead. She dead, boy. So this is actually exactly where you left off. Cool. I don't know how well you guys can read it. I can check. Not very well. At night in the Saigudan, Rika tells Hanyuu through the crystal that her mother is the reincarnation of Yashiro-sama and she does not know what to do. Hanyuu replies in her more adult voice that long ago, so long ago that even my memory falters before she is known as the Yashiro-sama, she, or rather the Yashiro-sama, decided to become a god. Her daughter Rika's ancestor was very sad. She explains that her daughter knew the blah blah blah. Yeah, we already know that shit. Vicious goddess. Yeah, even so. Hanyuu explains her daughter spoke to her with the same moves to a flashback. Her daughter explained, yeah. Peace returned to Hinamizawa, Hanyuu explains, but she could not return. The power of her hate remained too great for her to accept the world. Yeah, we got that part. The infant Rika appears to stare up at a smiling father as Hanyuu narrates that she was intended to occupy those thousands of years, waiting with my hatred for this world. She concedes that it became nothing but her own punishment, and when Rika's mother became pregnant, she prayed that she would give birth to a daughter. In her adult voice, Rika responds that she understands, and she feels as if Hanyuu was the first person she ever saw instead of her own mother. Hanyuu confesses that since she has felt that she has been living her life with the first friend in 1,000 years, and my daughter. However, when she encounters the dead end of Showa 58, 1983, she sinned again. She used her powers to alter Rika's fate. Surprised, Rika asks if Hanyuu means that in the very first world they should have accepted Takano ripping her open. Hanyuu replies, I'm sure this sounds cruel to you, but that is what I have come to believe. Hanyuu feels that she should have wisely with Rika and accepted the end, whether its form might have been. Angry, Rika tells her to stop. Hanyuu says May somehow enjoy wallowing in her guilt, and it gives no satisfaction to her. Rika reminds her that she thought that they both decided not to accept that fate and instead vowed to fight for as long as it took to achieve a better future. She cannot believe Hanyuu could suggest such a thing after all they have suffered through. Hanyuu calmly asks her to return to the main problem. Rika's mother is an 8th generation descendant of Yashiro-sama and how prevents Hanyuu from entering her world. She reminds Rika that she wanted her opinion on whether or not she should kill her mother to return to her original world or stay in her current world. When Rika quickly affirms this, Hanyuu scolds her for entrusting the decision and therefore the responsibility to her. She tells her a life chosen for her is not her life. She reminds her that she has traveled to many worlds, even those beyond the human realm, and she tells Rika to use her own strength rather than one borrowed from her. In the same thread where the person used proton, it looks like the cause of the issue is that Hanyuu sprites are being loaded wrong. You can actually see the exceptions in the log file, not to be confused with the dialogue log. Turns out they're using backslashes instead of forward slashes like everywhere else, causing the glitch. The person that discovered this was able to patch it using a hex editor, but that's admittedly a pain. I see. Definitely not something I want to do when it's almost fucking 2 a.m. So, we're just gonna keep reading the wiki to find out what the fuck happened. Rika asks if she chooses to remain in her current role, what would happen to Hanyuu? Hanyuu replies that their long journey together will end based on the rules of Rika's world. Hanyuu will not exist there. Rika hurriedly asks if Hanyuu is satisfied with that result, but Hanyuu responds by asking Rika to stop using her as an excuse. She does agree to help her with her decision by revealing what she knows of Rika's world. There's a flash to Mai about his home in his city. Sorry, it just infected my brains that Hanyuu is the reason why the game broke. Magic. Anyways, Hanyuu explains that Keiichi, who taught us again and again that our fate can be defeated over him leaving for school, that he never transferred to Hinamizawa, while the stress of studying for exams depresses him. He never shoots at children with a toy gun. Instead, he faces his stress and overcame it. As Hanyuu explains, Rika sees visions of Keiichi succeeding at school, including on his baseball team. Rika understands that since Keiichi never committed his sin, he never moved to Hinamizawa. Interesting. Hanyuu continues that with regards to Rihanna. Since her parents' company did not fall, they never moved to Ibaraki. Rika sees a vision of Reina preparing a meal with her mother watching. Since her parents never divorced, Reina did not feel responsible. Reina is happy with her cooking as her father joins them. When she starts to describe the lives of Mion and Shion, Rika interrupts to include that since Satoshi never disappeared, neither of them sinned. Hanyuu tells her that she is correct. Mion trains to become the new head of the family while Shion does her best to help from her school far away, hoping not to become a hindrance. With the vision of Satoshi leaving his house with his mother followed by Satoko and their stepfather, Hanyuu explains that Hojo never been seen as enemies and ostracized. Satoko never sins by killing her parents and is afflicted by the Hinamizawa syndrome. For Satoko and her family, Hanyuu explains this is an ideal world. Rika realizes that for everyone else, this is the ideal world. Hanyuu agrees and reveals that none of the people she has involved with has committed any sin. This is a beautifully pure and clean world. Iwan Takono is without sin. Hanyuu notes that the dice of destiny had led Rika to a world she would have considered a vital chance. Her hundreds of years, Rika repeats vital chance, and Hanyuu explains that Rika still has the option to return to her original world if she chooses to kill her mother. Rika will still make this choice to leave his sinless paradise by her own volition. This conversation occurs over a few of a small light, like a firefly traveling through the Saiguden, slowly through the forest to the Furude house. Rika notes that Hanyuu stated that she was killing her own daughter. She asks Hanyuu if she thinks that she should repeat that action simply to choose her own life. The light enters a room where Rika's mother sleeps next to her husband. Hanyuu responds by saying that if she were Rika's mother, she would respond, "My own life is less important than my daughter's happiness." The tiny light settles on the mother's pillow. In Saiguden, Rika protests that Hanyuu cannot be serious. She asks Hanyuu if she ever paused to consider what her daughter must have felt about killing her own mother. Hanyuu inhales slightly. Rika angrily continues that dying is easy, but the killer must bear with it for the rest of his life. Further, her descendants have borne it for the past 1,000 of years. She argues that Hanyuu should never have died, but should have lived on and fought. Hanyuu angrily interrupts her to ask if Rika feels like she should have continued living so she could fight. Then what will Rika do now? Will she accept her existence in her current world, where she will throw away the precious world she found after thousands of those hundreds of years? Or will she cast aside the comforts of this world to return to it, even if it means destroying the ideal world for everyone else? Hanyuu insists that she thought long and hard about her decision, and her daughter did not make a hasty decision either. That was our battle, and I won't allow anyone to make light of it. As Rika flinches, Hanyuu continues that she finally has something important to discuss with her. The crystal that links them will soon lose its power. Further, the fragment within Rika's mother will lose its power after the next day's sunset. Hanyuu explains that does not mean it will disappear, but Rika will forever lose the opportunity to reacquire it. Rika understands that she does not have a third option of delaying her choice. Hanyuu confirms that she cannot. She could simply look away and not make a choice, which would mean she would remain in this world without making a decision. Hanyuu warns that if she does that, her life will be very different from the one she could have chosen actively. She begs Rika to not simply run away. She reminds that whatever world she has fought to obtain will definitely be a wonderful place. Rika vows to try to fight by making a decision. She confesses that she has come to believe her life is something she could just try over and over due to Hanyuu's power. She realizes that her current world has taught her how important life is. She thanks Hanyuu, who fades from the crystal. Rika calls to her but receives no further answer. A woman gently waked Rika, not walked. She's not a dog. Rika wakes to find herself in a hospital bed. She asks the nurse where she is, but the nurse asks her to wait as she rushes away, calling the doctor. Rika hears her say that Rika-chan has regained consciousness, sensei. An adult man's feet approach, and then Rika says Yamamoto, who transforms into Irie Kyosuke. She says his name, questioning, but he just repeats, "Thank goodness," with a me. She asks if she's in the clinic. He responds that she is, and she hit her head while returning to Hinamizawa and been unconscious since then. Rika asks about her mother, and Irie responds that her memories must be confused. He confirms that she had been dead since the Watanagashi festival 2 years before. Rika looks sad and turns away. Surprised, Irie turns to smile and then promises to return quickly. After he leaves, Rika repeatedly asks for Hanyuu. With her childhood voice, "Ow," Hanyuu responds. She appears, translucent, sitting at Rika's bedside. In her adult voice, Rika confesses that she feels vulnerable when she enters a new world without Hanyuu. Hanyuu insists that she is always by her side when she wakes up. Rika asks if the world she was just in was just a dream, or real. Hanyuu pleasantly replies that she does not understand. Rika asks her again if the world she was in was a dream, and Hanyuu, in her adult voice, clearly snaps out back that it was. Rika understands this to mean that it was not a dream, and her killing of her own mother is what turned it into a dream and allowed her to enter her current world. She looks at her hands in horror, then has a flashback of her mother embracing her in the kitchen. She begins to cry. Well, we have her answer. She killed her mom. Yay. I guess not the appropriate time to say yay, but details. Continuing in her adult voice, Hanyuu gently tells Rika to calm down. After a quick view of many feet running, Hanyuu smiles and tells Rika that her friends have come to see her as she fades away. Satoko appears, saying her name quickly, followed by Keiichi. Satoko embraces Rika, repeating her name and crying. Rena enters, followed by Mion. "Welcome back, Rika-chan," Mion says. She continues that they all believe that she would return, and Keiichi adds that the miracles happen when they believe they will. Rena adds that she visited Rika every day, always believing that you wake up afterwards. Rika asks if Satoshi is not there. Satoko turns away and answers that Ini ran away from home and hasn't come back. It turns back to her and playfully scolds Rika for being so forgetful. Mion looks at her intently and agrees that Rika's memories are scrambled at the moment. Rena reveals that Rika has been a sleepyhead for almost a month. Rika explains that she felt like she had been dreaming for a month. Her dream took place in Hinamizawa, but a lot of things were different. She reveals the first Keiichi was not there. As Keiichi protests being left out, she explains that he was not there because he was never involved in the toy gun incident. Further in the world, Mion, Rena, and Satoko were all very happy. Rika suspects that the reason that she is in this world is because she chose it over that world. She killed her mom. Yay, that's exactly what I said. Mostly for being happy for the information, not happy that she killed her mom. Just to clarify, I'm not that much of a monster. Maybe. Mion lectures that Rika's description sounds like a near-death experience, and if Rika chose the other world, she never would have returned. Rika sheepishly agrees. Rena adds that this world sounds very interesting, and she thanks Rika for making them all happy, even if it was only a dream. Rika still looks down sadly, while Rena continues that if she had a choice, she would pick the current world rather than the one in Rika's dream. When Rika asks her why, Rena explains that her mother's divorce was an unpleasant experience. It changed her in many ways, and she learned a great deal from it. She now accepts her mother's divorce as one of life's trials. That's cute. Mion remarks that trials and setbacks make one grow as a person. Kichi agrees. While his incident is the greatest regret, which he must never forget and will regret until the day he dies, like Rena, he learned many things. Satoko also agrees. She explains that if her brother remained, she would have continued to depend upon him, as she can stand on her own and wait for his return. Rika says that they really believe this and reject the perfect and sinless world of Rika's dream. Rena contends that her world is far more precious. When Rika asks her why, Rena explains it's because they all fought to obtain their future. We're nothing like the people in that other world. Rika wonders if living in a world without sin is a sin with itself. Rena disagrees since a flower raised in a greenhouse is still beautiful even though it knows no adversity. Nipaaah. Rena walks to the window to observe flowers in the grass outside the clinic. She continues that a flower growing in a field that has survived adversity and possesses something more than just beauty. Rika asks her if what she had to choose between growing up in a greenhouse or in a field. Rena suddenly realizes that Rika had been mistaken from the very beginning. When Rika's "me" is in reply, Rena approaches her with her hands behind her back. She cautions Rika that she cannot compare an impossible world to her current one. Rika would have to be a goddess capable of traveling between both worlds to compare them. Rena suggests that Rika of both worlds exists, and that I think both of them are living proudly in their other worlds. Satoko adds that even a loser would not cry over having been born into a rich family. Rena decides that it may be easier to explain with a game. She rhetorically asks Mion if she brought some candy. Mion gives Rena some. Rena then presents her 2 fists to Rika and asks her to choose. Rika picks her hand, which Rena opens to reveal 1 candy. Rika smiles, and Rena congratulates her, then feeds her the treat. Rika gives a satisfied "Nipaaah." She declares that she is happy that she made the right choice. Rena's wisdom. How? Goodness. Rena then reveals that her other hand had contained 2 candies and states, "What you're feeling right now is probably pretty close to what you were feeling before." Rena repeats that comparing the 2 worlds is something humans cannot do. She holds up 1 candy and notes that there is only 1 world for them, and is set up so they can find happiness in it. Rika was in effect, according to Rena, a goddess who could travel between 2 worlds in her dream and feel the way she does. She should not worry about what is in the other hand. Rika flashes back to her asking Hanyuu if she was a dream, and Hanyuu affirming that it was. To herself, Rika concludes that the other world was not a dream, but since she had made her choice, it became a dream and her current world is reality. In a flashback to the realm that contains time fragments that depict scenes from previous arcs, Rika confessed to herself that she stepped half-heartedly into the world of gods, being a mere human. This confused her over very important things back in her current world. Rika smiles. "It's time for me to give up being a witch. I must return to being Furude Rika rather than the witch Burncastle." Kichu asks her if she's alright. Rika looks up and responds in her child voice that it means that she must be careful not to get into accidents. Nipaaah. This surprises all her friends, who then laugh. Mion even jokes that Rika has been acting like she's some sort of witch. 'Cause she is. As the Higurashi cry over a scene of the mountains at sunset, Hanyuu gently explains in her adult voice that should Rika lose her life again, she thinks that she could accept that fate. Rika agrees in her adult voice that she is fine with it as well. A translucent Hanyuu sits at Rika's clinic bed and looks out the window. Rika then thanks her. Hanyuu asks her why, and Rika merely responds, "For lots of reasons." After a pause, Hanyuu wishes Rika sweet dreams, and please treasure this future that you've won. Overviews of various points in Hinamizawa. As the montage continues, Rika continues that Rika agrees that she will, and once she is discharged, she will visit her parents' grave. She reveals that she now understands the meaning of having to kill her mother. "I've always chosen this world without feeling as if it were a sin to do so, and thus I've continued to kill my mother over and over again." She then asks Hanyuu why did her to realize that her sin, particularly her failure to respect her parents. Softly in her adult voice, Hanyuu thanks Rika for realizing this. She declares that she feels the greatest since that I have felt within you has now finally been cleansed. That's just a confusing sentence. Okay. She then reveals that Rika did not actually kill her mother to return to this world, and the perfect world was just a dream that Hanyuu gave Rika so I could bully you a bit. She hopes that when Rika wakes up, she will forget about it. She wishes her a good night and asks her to dream about how she will live her life in the future. Okay. Well, probably the greatest sins, not since. You know what? That makes a lot more sense, and I'm not sure if I read it wrong or if that was a typo. I guess we'll never know because I already left the tab. I just realized you guys can't really look at the image I picked. There you go. There is she. Welcome. Since she broke the game, you might as well view her, right? Bye-bye.